Some of you might like to know a little bit more about our drummer.
Now going back to 40 years of Chick Webb.
I did that.
Is drummer right? Is it okay to say drummer?
Pounding his pulsing beat into the hearts of all America.
You motherfuckers are fucking all over this joint.
You do your kind of drumming, and I'll do my kind of drumming.
I have no more time. You don't know when I'm up again.
The only things I care about in this goddamn life are me and my drums and you.
The official explanation was he choked on vomit.
You suppose maybe I could put the drums in your place and sort of drop in once in a while?
Now back to Gene Krupa's syncopated style shortly.
Get up there behind those drums, lean back, close your eyes, get right in the groove there, give it a good steady beat.
I got blisters on my fingers.
I get that.
I'm in Palm Desert, California with Hal Blaine. Hal, thank you so much for having me over today.
It's 91 degrees out there and absolutely beautiful.
I don't know how you can stand it here. It's just miserable.
Well, a lot of times it's 117, 118, but somehow we're having a very mild beginning of summer. And I know that summer officially starts in a few days, I understand. So yeah. I just love it down here. I moved down here because I fell in love with it some years ago. And I always wanted to retire down here, and I did.
When did you get here? When did you first move here?
I moved here just exactly 10 years ago.
Okay.
So this is 2013, so right around 2003.
So that was always the plan. You knew in your head, that's where I'm going to go.
That's where I wanted to retire. This is where I wanted to retire.
Did you know someone out here that you...
You know, there was a wonderful elderly woman that there was a period after one of those horrible divorces for me that just about wiped me out of my mansion in the Hollywood Hills and on and on and on, the Rolls Royce, the yacht, everything was gone. And so I decided I would move down here just to get away from it all. There was a very nice elderly woman whose name was Sally Ahrens, just a sweetheart of a woman. And she loved me because I was, 1, Jewish, 2, I was a member of the Rolls-Royce Owners Club, and 3, she wanted me to drive her places, which I always did. She wasn't exactly crippled, but she had a tough time. She's not a young woman, and of course she passed away a few years ago. Anyway, I was happily driving her, and she was filling me in because she was one of the 4 mothers, I guess, instead of 4 fathers, of the whole Palm Springs area. She built the first hotels with her husband, the first motels, all the condos. She owned all kinds of condos. Her home up in the Kauai Hills here, very famous area, gorgeous place. I loved that house. It was an amazing. You could shoot off guns in the living room. I mean, it was just a wonderful...
Did you ever do that?
I never did.
Okay.
I never did. Oddly enough, back in the 50s, I actually was a police officer in the city of San Bernardino.
Wow.
Right off the top of my head. I went to high school in San Bernardino. And there was a brand new club opening, and they asked me to put a band together, which I did. I was just a kid.
How old were you at that point?
Well, this was 1950 or 51. I guess I was going on 30 years old.
Wow.
And it turned out that just before the club opened, the police department people came in, and they had some kind of an ordinance that whenever a band is playing, there had to be an armed guard. Well, maybe that was part of their, moonlighting to get a police officer a job. I don't know. But the club owner was a fellow by the name of Ken Berry. Very sharp man, played wonderful organ. And Ken talked to his attorney about it, and the sharp attorney said, if it's only when the band is playing, maybe somebody in the band could be a policeman. That's exactly what happened. Ken came to us. We were rehearsing, maybe a week before we opened, and he said, "Does anybody own a gun?" Well, I had a pistol because I was, at the time, dating a girl who was on Capitol Records. Her name was Vicki Young, great singer, passed away. She was going to Mexico. She was going to Tijuana and other places. And I said, "I'm not going anywhere without a gun." And I went down and bought a gun. I mean, it was illegal, but I said I'd rather get caught with a gun than get caught by a gang of hoodlums or whatever. I want a gun.
You bought it under the table? Or?
Well, I went to a hawk shop.
Okay.
Purchased a gun. It was no problem. You know, in 3 days you sign up a thing, and 3 days later. But meanwhile, they sent me to the police department, and I went through a bunch of training for several days, and I sort of became, not undercover or anything like that, but I was a plainclothes policeman.
You had the badge?
I actually got a badge, ID, handcuffs, the whole thing. And I never had to ever fire a gun, and never had to do anything.
Okay.
But the hysterical part about it is that I played Mexico, and we played Arizona, and we played Las Vegas and a bunch of places, and we came back to San Bernardino. And this is when the club opened. I mean, this is another trip. I already had this gun before I had a badge. And so when I finally got my badge and this new club that opened, and I had a gun, of course, and I never had to worry about anybody, but for some reason, they needed not uniform, but an armed police officer, official, when they closed up the place at night, so that there were no hold-ups or robberies or drunks or whatever. And this was kind of a tough little place. It was a great supper club that San Bernardino was not used to. And a lot of the Marines came from the Marine Corps base. They were a bunch of tough guys.
Did you ever have any trouble there?
Well, the only thing that ever happened was one night, we're closing up, and there's several Marines sitting there. And they're young guys, you know, they're recently in the Marines, whatever, and they know they're tough guys. And in a nice way, it was about 10 minutes to 2, and they closed at 2. And I walked over to their table very nicely, and I said, "Fellas, I'm sorry, but we're about to close up, so you either have to drink up your drinks, because we don't want any trouble here. And who the hell do you think you are, punk? You know, go play your drums." And what I did was I opened my jacket with my pistol and my badge, and they took one look. And they said, "Well, okay, all right, we're out of here." And they got up and they left. It never was a problem.
Yeah.
So maybe we'd played there for a long time. Maybe about 2.5, 3 months into the gig, I go out one night. We're closing up, and I had already met a lot of policemen. They used to take me. They used to call me their plainclothesman detective. I would ride in the black and white at night. I had nothing to do. And so I come out one night, and I'm closing up, and there's a great big floodlight in the parking lot in the back of this club. The club was the Magic Carpet. Beautiful nightclub. And so as I come out, I see a bunch of kids looking to steal a wheel or a tire or something off a car. Well, ta-da, here I go. I go running out there, and I said, "Hold it, you guys. Police." And these guys took off running. Who knows how many there were or anything else. But as I'm chasing them, there's this big floodlight behind me, shining on me, and they've run into the dark. And I started thinking, these guys could have, who knows what, a shotgun, blow my head off. So as I'm slowly running, I said, I'm going to give them a good scare. I pull the gun out, and I start firing. Click, 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 click. 6 times it clicked as I was backing up. It was like a cartoon. I got to the back door and in I went. That was it. The next morning I went right down to where all the police go to get their guns and stuff. And the guy looked at this gun. He said, "Where the hell did you get this?" I said, "It's something that I picked up some years ago, and I've had it all this time." And he said, "It won't fire because there's no firing pin in this gun." I said, "My God, I carried it all over Mexico. I carried it in Arizona and not Nevada." Anyway, I bought a .38 at the time, which I still have, the wonderful police snub nose. And as I said, I never had to use it. I never had to pull it.
You never flashed it again on people?
Never, nothing. Absolutely nothing. The one thing that I did do, I had learned from one of the police officers one time that if you never know when a child might get a hold of a gun. And I had no worries about children, but one of their tricks was they would put a full load blank in the first one coming up. These were, revolvers. Mm-hmm. Before all of the heavy armed 45s came out and all of that. The military had 45s, but the police didn't. They had 38s. And before the 9mm came out. And so I did have a full load blank. And one time we were doing Batman. We were doing Batman, and Neil Hefti wanted to get some I think it was Neil Hefti. He wanted to have some crazy things happen in the background. Emil Richards and we had all our toys. So at one point, Neil asked about anyone have a gun? And Emil had a little starter pistol. Nothing. And I said, "No, he wants a gun." I took out the bullets. I filled it up with blanks. I ran out to my car, filled it up with blanks. I had 6 of them. And Emil put up his big gong. And I was firing into the gong. All this crazy music. And I'm going, huge explosions. And there's a wad that comes out from the blank, and when it hits the gong, boom! It's like a gigantic mallet hitting. It was perfect. I don't know that I've ever heard the album, but it was very famous. That was the first big Batman. That's the only time I ever fired that gun. I took it home that night, as I recall, cleaned it, put it away, and never ever, never use it again. Yeah, I still have it in my bedroom, hidden. God forbid.
Did you carry it though a lot at that time?
Oh, I had it in my briefcase always. Because I had my badge.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I was no longer part of the police department, once you're a police officer, you carry your concealed weapons permit, the CCW. Carry a concealed weapon forever, as long as you're in your county.
Yeah, okay.
Well, as soon as I moved from the San Bernardino County, the biggest county in the world, into L.A. full time, I had to turn in my ID. Not the badge. I still have the badge. But anyway, never worried, because wherever I went, all those years, I would get to Las Vegas with my police ID now, and I'd show them in Hawaii, wherever I went. It was perfectly legit. They would write me a little thing, if I ever got stopped by the local police or anything. Never had a problem, I just never got into those kind of problems with the drugs or the booze or the gambling or anything else.
Did you dabble ever?
Never. Never did.
But it was going around. You saw it all around you. Right?
Oh, sure. There was, you could see it.
Mm-hmm.
But our wrecking crew, believe it or not, were very clean guys.
Everyone.
Everybody was. I never saw that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't happen.
Nobody ran out to smoke weed or...
Well, the thing about it, I was just going to say, I'll never forget, we were working at Gold Star, a very famous studio in Hollywood. And we took it was a 5-minute break or 10-minute break, whatever it was, and we walked out in the parking lot. The guys would have a smoke. Everybody smoked cigarettes in those days. Guys could have a smoke, drink a Coke, whatever. While we're standing out there, our little gang, a little wrecking crew, 2 obviously looking tourists come walking up, and they happen to walk right up to me, and they, with very a proper British accent, I beg pardon, we see you're musicians here, and we're musicians from England, and we're trying to locate the drummer, Hal Blaine. Would you happen to know who he is? I mean, this is one in how many people in the world? I don't know. And I said, you got to be kidding. Well, it turned out to be Kenny Clare, one of the great British drummers, and Barry Morgan, also a great British drummer, who eventually had the Morgan Studios that became very famous over there. Unfortunately, Kenny passed away, and you got people dying all the time. And my good friend Eddie Shaughnessy just passed away. Made me sick, and I was talking to him every day, you know. You have no idea.
You were talking every day, even the day before, or?
Oh, absolutely. For a whole week we were talking about, and it was so strange because he was talking rather loud to me, and I thought, well, maybe he had lost some hearing all those years doing the Tonight Show, and the big bands and so forth. Although the band was not behind him, that happens to a lot of drummers.
But earplugs wasn't a thing back then, right?
I don't think so.
I mean, you never used them, right?
I never did.
Yeah, so.
But I was wearing headsets a lot of times. Stuff.
Were you going to say before, by the way, that Kenny Clare, were they going to ask you for some smoke? Was that where that's?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
No,
I thought maybe that was going there.
No, we took a lot of pictures there.
Okay.
They were flipped out when they saw this is Gold Star, because it's just it's a nice studio, but you could get 11 people in there and be crowded. That's where Phil Spector had his so-called wall of sound. Mm-hmm. Today, of course, he's working on a new band called the Prison Wall of Sound.
Oh,
bada boom! Poor Phil. You know,
did you you got along with Phil always, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Never had any trouble with Phil.
I never had any trouble.
Did you ever see any trouble with Phil?
I never saw a gun.
When that whole thing came out, did you
30...
think to yourself, that's not Phil, or did you think, that could be Phil?
You know, my thought was for my daughter, because she was Phil's right arm for about 4.5 years up until that point, till that shooting happened. And, I mean, she's a happily married woman. And all of a sudden, Phil goes through what he goes through. And I happened to be in Petaluma with David Grisman when the phone rang, and it was Michelle calling me, and she was crying. I said, what is going on? It scared me to death. And she said, they won't let me in the castle. I said, what are you talking about? Somebody got shot in the castle, and it's all police, and they won't let me go to my office. And I don't know what to do. I said, sweetheart. She said, Phil is in jail. He's not here. And he's in Alhambra in jail. And I said, you call Bob Shapiro right away, because I used to go there for lunches all the time, and all these wonderful people. Phil had these lunches going all the time, catered in this magnificent castle.
When you say Bob Shapiro, do you mean Robert Shapiro,
Robert
who defended
Shapiro,
O.J. Simpson?
yeah.
Were you friends with him?
Yeah.
Okay.
And now he owns this Legal Zoom thing that's so big for them. But the point was, she did. She called Bob. She knew who he was. He used to come to the dinners, lunches. And she called Bob, and there was another major attorney who had just passed away. I forget his name now. Nice man. And Phil would have me there for comedy relief. I just did gags, you know. And of course, a lot of it was the old Jewish stuff that came from the Catskills and all the tailors, the immigrants, etc., etc. goes on forever. But Bob Shapiro got him out, and what happened was that about 4 days later, I was getting an award from LA Weekly, and it was at the Henry Fonda Theater in Hollywood. The place was jammed. It's one of those places everybody stands up. They did have a reserved table for me in the back, me and Michelle and Ricky, my drum guy, and a few, 4 or 5 people. And I'm sitting there, and it's so noisy, you can't hear a thing. And all of a sudden, Phil comes walking up. He grabbed me by the hair. I'm sitting down. He pulled my head back, kissed me full on the lips, and he said, "I've got to talk to you." So we went outside to talk. And he told me this is his entire story. Well, I had no reason to disbelieve Phil. He'd never lied to me that I knew of. My daughter's his right arm. She charters airplanes for him all over the world, and on and on and on and on. Big bucks. And so I had no reason to disbelieve him. I'd never seen him again after that. The trial finally starts, and now we hear the real story. So that Phil's story was all a bunch of baloney. It just didn't happen the way Phil had put it in his head that it happened. Because he didn't. And we know it was an accident. We know he didn't decide, I'm going to kill this girl. She had the gun in her mouth. Maybe by Phil's doing, I don't know, but he claimed she had the gun in her mouth and she was going to stay there. Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, the limo driver, she had pleaded with him from the time they picked her up. She did not want to go to the castle. Phil was begging her to come to the castle to have a drink. She's a beautiful woman, Lana. And Phil had a whole entirely different story, which blew up in his face finally. And that was the end of that. I've never seen Phil again. I've never talked to him. He gave me that beautiful picture I have of Lenny Bruce. That was another connection that we had because he loved Lenny Bruce.
Did you ever get to know Lenny?
Lenny was a dear friend of mine.
So let's talk about Lenny.
Well, Lenny was, they used to call him, what do they call him, the dirty comedian or something like that? I mean,
well,
he used to use the word hell once in a while. And it was just ridiculous what they did to him. But Lenny was a flat-out junkie, unfortunately.
Did you get to know him after he was already he made it, he was doing shows?
He was getting good reviews, he was getting famous.
But you knew he was a junkie, you're saying?
He was a junkie.
He was open about it.
Yeah. He was.
Did he expect you to be too as a musician? Was he thinking, come on, you're one of these?
No. Once again, I was Jewish, he was Jewish. Mm-hmm. We used to tell Jewish jokes to each other.
Sure.
Lenny was just one of the sweetest guys in the world. But the police really picked on him something terrible.
Super intelligent, right?
Unbelievable. Brilliant guy.
So you hung out with a lot of comedians.
I was working with Buddy Hackett when no one ever heard of him. I was working with Don Rickles. Nobody ever heard of him. Don was on Letterman last night.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Hysterical.
So you hung with Don Rickles?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. That's great.
I was with him when he used to scream, "Hell, would you get a table ringside, for Christ's sake?" You couldn't get in. We opened this club called Slate Brothers in Hollywood. And Don was the first act in there. And the first 2, 3, 4 nights, there was 3 people. By the 4th night, the middle of the week, you couldn't get into place. I'm talking about Clark Gable. Everybody in Hollywood was in that club trying to get insulted by this guy, because that was his thing.
Yeah. But you knew all these guys. I mean, and you're cracking them up, probably.
Well, the comedy is their life. Don was actually had been studying actor studio in Hollywood, in New York.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And did become an actor. He came to me one day. He said, "Hal, I'm going to be in the movies with Clark Gable." I said, "No kidding, Don. It's great." And it was his first movie called Run Silent, Run Deep, submarine movie. And he's been in movies ever since. Mm-hmm. And he's a good actor. Mm. And let's face it, he's up there in years too. Buddy Hackett was the same thing. We were working I had a little band in a club in Bakersfield. It was called the Saddle and Sirloin. And it was just a nice little sort of a country place. Bakersfield. You're in Bakersfield. Anyway, Buddy Hackett comes to me one day. He said, "You're not going to believe this, the way he talks. You're not going to believe this. I'm going to be in a movie. I got a call to be in a movie." I said, "That's great. That's great." And he's telling me, "You got to come to the house, Barbara's going to," or whatever her name is, I forget. "She'll cook for you, because of the once again, the Jewish thing, And we always had jokes. He was another one that used to say, you couldn't pass him without, "Have a drink. Come on, have a drink." I said, "I don't have it. I don't drink. I hate the taste of booze." Buddy was a lunatic on the golf course. And Buddy was one of these guys that he walked so fast, he fired the caddy. He said, "Go back to the goddamn clubhouse. I don't need that." He was a wacko. Yeah. As far as I was concerned.
I heard he had the filthiest mouth in Hollywood.
Unbelievable.
It's true.
Unbelievable. You can't say these words. And so the funniest thing happened, there are stories I can't really tell, but the wild part about it, I started working as an actor, and I was actually working for Walt Disney.
Now, who got you the first gig? Who pulled you in?
Tommy Sands.
He just said, "You got it, Hal. You got to be doing this. You got that. You can handle this."
What happened was that Tommy Sands had a manager by the name of Colonel Tom Parker.
I heard of him.
And Colonel Tom had Elvis booked for a television show. Elvis went into service. So Colonel Tom put Tommy Sands, who was a disc jockey in Houston, I think, he got him the part. And nobody in Hollywood wanted to play rock and roll. Drummers, all of the top A-list players were not going to play this new filthy genre of rock and roll. And I came along doing demos with Glenn Campbell, Leon Russell, and a few of the guys, because those were the days when you did demos for artists, for Andy Williams, Sinatra, anybody. The song pluggers in those days would bring you songs. Could you make us a demo? We were doing all these demos. Glenn Campbell could sound like anybody. And sometimes the demos were so good they used them as masters. This is what opened the door for us. Now, meanwhile, Tommy Sands gets this break, and I'm working in a little club in Hollywood. Well, this guy come up to me one day, and he said, "Hey, kid, I like the way you play the drums. We're looking for a drummer for an act that I'm managing." And I said, "What kind of music?" Because I'm playing jazz with Carol Simpson. It was a great jazz thing. And he said, "Well, this kid is he's going to be a big rock and roll star." And I said, "I really don't play that music." So he said, "You could play it. Anybody could play it. He just sings songs." He just did this TV show, and they need a drummer because Capitol Records is going to sign him. And my ears opened up a little bit. Capitol Records, wow. And that's what happened. So I went in and auditioned for Tommy Sands. And by the third song, he said, "You got the job." So I started with Tommy, and we played all over the world because the drummers in Hollywood would not play this nasty And guys like Shelly Manne and all these great drummers.
They wanted nothing to do with it.
Al Stoller, all of my favorite drummers, you know. They started asking me, what is this rock and roll? So listen, you guys, it's a backbeat. It's just a simple backbeat on 2 and 4. It's the easiest thing you'll ever do, and you'll put $100 in your pocket. Well, it turned out for me, it was like falling into a vat of chocolate. I mean, Earl Palmer was the guy at the time. There were 2 or 3 drummers, and I can't think of their names right now, that were doing some rock and roll. And all of a sudden I came along. Herb Alpert hired me, and the rest was, for me, the rest was history. We did A Taste of Honey, and it was Record of the Year. It was the first time, my first Record of the Year. I had 7 of them. 6 in a row. But I was on everybody's record, so I couldn't miss, sort of, you know.
Yeah.
4 or 5 records up for Record of the Year. I was on at least 3 of them. So I was very fortunate. And recently, Herb and a bunch of people, Nancy Sinatra, Lou Adler, they had a wonderful surprise party for me in Beverly Hills. And I went, it was like 1,800 people. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was just going to be a showing of our movie, The Wrecking Crew, which everybody listening has got to see that movie. Have you seen the movie yet?
I have.
It's really a great
I just
film.
wish they could work out the, it's all the rights, right?
They're working it. Yeah. They're working it out
so
now. They paid off the major publishers.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, that was $700,000, and now he's paying off. The union wanted $300,000. They finally settled for $200,000. So Denny Tedesco, the director, he was the son of Tommy Tedesco. He really did this movie as a memorial to his dad. Tommy was, if not the greatest guitarist in the world, certainly with the Barney Kessels and those guys. He played so incredible, and he was a very dear friend of mine. He was another guy. He's never without a cigarette. And that's what got him in the end, really, was the cancer. So,
and by the way, you mentioned Earl Palmer.
Earl.
I mean, he was the guy, you're saying, when you...
Earl was the man. Yeah. Earl had come from New Orleans. He was doing whatever little record, rock and roll was going on at the time. He was doing people like Percy Faith and some of those, big stars. And he couldn't handle it all. It was so busy. And he had caught me with the Diamonds one time, and he said, man, you play great, and, give me your number, and on and on. So he started recommending me to people. So the first shot I got was with H.B. Barnum, and we were doing Sam Cooke. We did a record called Another Saturday Night. Big hit record. And people started asking H.B., how come you used a White Cat? He said, you better listen to this White Cat, because that's where it's going. And boy, they were right, thank goodness. And I've said it was like falling into a vat of chocolate from this $90 a week gig at the Garden of Allah. That was the club in Hollywood.
Garden of Allah.
Yeah.
I heard of that. How old were you at that point?
Well, that was about 1955. So I was born 29, 39, 49. I was about 35, something like that.
So you're saying you were. It wasn't until you were 35 that it really started to just.
Yeah, the big time.
Yeah.
I had been doing demos. I had been learning things. I mean, when I was in San Bernardino High School, my dear friend William Bill Bellman, was a disc jockey, and it was called Bill the Bellman Show. And Bill had heard about me being a drummer. I was working after-hours clubs and so forth in San Bernardino. And Bill asked me if I'd come in and do some demos with him. Mm-hmm. But that's what really started it. It's KFXM, San Bernardino.
So at that point, you were, what was your lifestyle? Like, how were you living?
I had an apartment.
1 bedroom, studio, what?
I'm sure it was a studio.
Okay.
I was working different clubs. Mm-hmm. I was actually working for a I guess I can say the word mafia.
Sure, talk about it. What were you doing?
Well, there was a club in San Bernardino. It was a private home out near Norton Air Force Base. And it was a 3-story home. In the basement was gambling. The first floor was, I had a little trio and a bar. They had a bar. The second floor was for, in case any of the guests got drunk or in trouble, they could put them in rooms upstairs. And then the third floor were the chicks.
Nice.
It was quite a place. And
what was your function there?
I was playing drums.
But were you the house drummer, or was it just one band?
No, it was just one little trio there playing.
Every night, every week, what?
Every night, 6 nights a week we were playing, yeah.
So that was your gig?
On the 7th night, Duke Bonanno was the owner. And Duke knew me because of Chicago. I worked 3 years in a club with these dems and those guys, and they gave me a very nice reference, I guess, when I came to California. So I'm working for Duke Bonanno. And
what was he like, Duke Bonanno?
He was one of them guys that talk like this, just like this.
Was he from Napoli?
I don't know exactly where he was.
Was
from.
he a tough guy in the sense of like would you see him go into a rage, or was he always keep
not
it
a
cool?
rage?
He kept it cool.
Not a rage, but he was a very tough guy. The guys that I worked with in Chicago were first of all heavily armed. I was working in a strip joint, 12, 14, 16 girls a night.
Yeah.
Stripping. That's where I really learned how to become an accompanist. And these girls used to come to me and say, "Gee, the way you play the drums for me, it's just absolutely wonderful." And they were wonderful ladies. I mean, the reason I got the job, there was a great drummer there by the name of Mickey Screama. And Mickey was one of the great, he was with Harry James for years.
Okay, yeah.
Very sharp drummer, but unfortunately Mickey was fooling around with that stuff, and he didn't show up for work one night in Chicago. And one of the strippers knew that this young kid living in the same hotel that we all lived in, this hotel was hookers, junkies, gamblers, gunsels. I mean, this hotel you wouldn't have believed. I stayed at a place, I'm sure it's not there anymore, the Majestic Hotel. And some of the girls were actually working at Minsky's. And I actually started dating a girl at Minsky's for, 5 minutes.
A dancer or
a dancer, just strictly a dancer. No, nothing nude or anything like that. She was in the line in the chorus. But anyway, one of the strippers from one of the clubs phoned me at the hotel and said, "The drummer got sick. You think you could get up here and sit in? His drums are here." And I said, "Yeah." So I grabbed a trolley immediately. It wasn't that far from me, North State Street, and it was the Post Time Club. I played, and that night, the boss came to me. There was Vince and Tony, and they were, what do you do, kid? Or they were all from Italy. They were a very rough bunch of guys. They said, "Do you fool around with them crazy cigarettes, sir?" "No, sir, I'm going to school." And I said, "Oh, you're
crazy cigarettes."
"Oh, you don't know the half." They said, "You want to work over here tomorrow night? Can you come back?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Okay, the drums will still be here." Now, I used to go to school from 8 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. I worked at the club from 8 at night to 4 in the morning. It was a tough, but what incredible basic training.
Yeah.
I'm going to school and I'm doing all this sight reading. So, I think the third night, Vince was the little guy. Tony was the tough guy. He called me into the office. There was only one door in this whole place, front door. You only had
one way in and out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And at the front door was one of these guys. It's like a 7-foot gorilla. Knew all the vice, etc. And they had a little button by the side of the door. If you ever saw the cops coming, we had lights on the stage that would flash. The minute they started flashing, we would go into billboard. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. No matter what the girl was doing, she'd grab her clothes, run to the dressing room. The comedian would run out and start a joke in the middle. So this guy said to the other guy, and what do you know? And this, pretty soon the door would open, and all these guys would come in, also Vice.
Yeah.
Just walk in and look around, make sure. The girls always wore pasties.
Yeah.
There was nothing really nude.
Right.
But it was one of those B joints they call bar, for bar girls. One of these B joints that these guys would come in. They'd see a girl dancing. They were exotic, beautiful women. And the girls would go down after and have a drink. They were called bar girls. They'd have a drink with the guy, and for every drink they had, which was a phony, they'd get a little swizzle stick, and they'd save all these sticks in a little purse. At the end of the night, they'd turn them in, and they were getting like a quarter, 30 cents per stick. If they were lucky enough with the sucker, whoever it was, to order champagne, that was like a $15 or $20 bottle of champagne. Then they'd get a bigger stick. What happened was that the lights were always very, very low. And under the table, there was a little playing going on with these guys. I'm telling you, it was unbelievable.
It was a special kind of place.
The place in San Bernardino was totally different. The customers were treated with great respect. A lot of them were gamblers. Some were drinking upstairs and dancing with our little group. Mm-hmm. And there was a guy, Billy his name was, and he was the toughest guy you've ever met in your life. I'm sure he's gone today, and he won't be back in 10 minutes. This guy, if he liked you and you were drunk, he'd put you over his shoulder, he'd take you up to the second floor, put you in a bed. If you gave him any kind of trouble, he took you outside and almost killed you. And he did this one night to a couple of tough guys. And they came back about 6:30 in the morning with dynamite, and they blew up this entire place. My sister called me. I was working at a dairy. I used to go to work at 7 o'clock in the morning or 6:30 at this dairy. And one of the bosses came to me and said, your sister's calling. What? And I run to the phone. She said, you better get over to that place you were working because there's been an explosion and your drums are there. Jesus. So I told the boss in the dairy. I ran over to this place. The house was gone. There was just smolderings going on. But there was the upright piano fell over my drums. My drums were not hurt. I got my drums, took them out, and then Duke Bonanno, he said, we're still going to work downstairs. You want to work over here for me? I say, yeah, Duke, I'll work for you. Okay, you come in, you help clean up, and that was it. It's a whole nother long story. I mean, it's a whole nother movie. It's really The Godfather.
Duke, and you got along with Duke?
Oh, yeah. Duke was so funny. He was just a really wonderful man. And they owned a grocery. They had several, establishments. Sure. Sweetheart of a guy.
He treated you well. He took care of you.
Treated me beautifully, yeah. It was a very strange thing that happened one night. This guy I was talking about that beat up the guys and they came back and blew up the building. Yeah. He was a tough, crazy kind of a guy. And after this happened, a few people, Duke moved us into a hotel downtown San Bernardino, Fleabag. And there was a waitress, Audrey. Somehow, she had one eye over here, one eye over there. She was a beautiful little gal. She was just a sweetheart of a nice girl. And I remember we came home one night. maybe it was 6, 7 in the morning, and she already had gone to bed, and she had those Dutch doors on her hotel room, and the thing was open. And this guy used to say to me, that goddamn bitch, she drive me crazy. She loved me, I can't stand. Had one eye over here, I said, hey, where you looking at me? You're looking over here, you. This is for real. It's tough people. And she was sleeping. And so he decided, he opened the door and he walked in and he started pummeling her. And she came out of the sleep and there was a bottle of milk laying there. In those days, it was the milk bottles.
Yeah.
And she whacked him across the face, and he was bleeding like a sieve. And I had to rush him to the hospital, which I did. And I called Duke and told him, Duke said, take him to the hospital right away, which I did. I'm not using his name. And they stitched him up, etc. And they had a place out of town. They said, take him to the ranch. This was a hideout where these guys used to come from all over the country. If they were hot, they went there until things cooled off.
Had you ever been there before?
Had never been there before. But I knew how to get there. It was Victorville, was all I knew. And so he said, take him out to Victorville, leave him there to cool off. Because he was a wacko. This little girl, Audrey, she was so pretty. She got out of the hospital. She was a mess. Her eyes were swollen. He really beat her bad. The miracle of miracles, her eyes were perfectly straight now.
Holy shit.
I'm telling you, make the hair rise.
That's fucked up.
Couldn't believe it. She was a pretty girl. And she loved the son of a bitch even more.
After that.
I don't know whatever happened to them because I got lucky and I went to Hollywood. Got the hell out of Dodge. But those were the days, and I guess I was fortunate enough to grow up in that.
Yeah.
And have the experiences that I had. When I did start working a little bit in films, Tommy Sands got a picture. He put me in the picture. So I joined Screen Actors Guild. He got me into all of that stuff.
And that was probably better money than the music stuff, huh?
Forget it. That was
where it's at.
I wasn't really even hot in a music thing yet. But all of a sudden now, working in some of these films, and I'm getting a day pay of $75 a day.
That was your real first taste of big money, right?
That was pretty good money, yeah, it really was. But then after I got into the studios, I went from that $70 a week, if I was lucky, we're making $1,000 a day. 7 days a week.
What?
Well, that lasted a long time, several years. It was everybody started coming to Hollywood. Rock and roll was just infiltrating movies, commercials. We were doing everybody's pilots, Three's Company, all those shows, Batman, on and on and on. We were doing everything, plus recordings.
Yeah.
I told you I had 7 records of the year, 6 in a row.
Yeah, of course.
And I missed with Barbra Streisand, The Way We Were, and I just knew that was going to be my 7th record of the year. And some little groupie thing got it for whatever reason. That was record of the year. And then it was either a year or 2 later that I got my last one, which was Love Will Keep Us Together, the Captain and Tennille.
Captain and Tennille, yeah.
Big record.
So did you, when you were doing the films, did you ever think to yourself, I'm in the wrong racket, I should be doing this?
I really loved music.
Yeah.
And I knew that I kind of used that as an analogy, because I got to know that good character actors worked all the time, but stars sat home wondering when the next picture's going to come along, that type of thing. So I wasn't that nuts.
But you could have been a character actor, is all I'm saying.
Well,
you didn't really think about it, though. You didn't really...
I really didn't think. I mean, I was not a leading man. I was not a Tommy Sands. He was gorgeous. I was not all these guys that I started working with, Jack Lemmon, all these great actors, and I'm doing all these commercials. Don Pystrup was the king of the commercials in Hollywood. He eventually owned Bell Sound Studios, and I lived there. I practically 4, 5, 6 commercials a day I would do there. I would run from a 3-hour session over there, do an hour, run back to another session somewhere, maybe Elvis, whatever. It was so easy to go in and do a commercial, 60-second commercial. Once you had it, of course you were reading it, once you had it, within 25, 30 minutes, everybody goodbye. They'd make 12, 14, they'd make from that 60, they'd make a 40, they'd make a 30, they'd make a 20, a 15, a 10, even a 5-second commercial. We would get a check for every one of those. I mean, really falling into a vat of chocolate, let me tell you. It was an amazing, amazing time.
Did you start spending the money? You mentioned you had a yacht.
Well, like a lot of people, I would run into deals. I had all this money in the bank. And I met some very nice guy, a couple of brothers that were yacht brokers at the marina. They had this beautiful new boat that just came in. It was, $300,000-$400,000. At first I bought a small boat, and I was learning all about, I got my Coast Guard license and all that stuff. Then you wanted a real boat.
Yeah.
So then I got a 40-footer with twin everything, twin radars, twin air conditionings, twin furnaces, twin diesel engines. You would not believe the size of the engines. Took up the whole boat. They were Cummins, amazing, amazing. I joined the California Yacht Club, the most prestigious yacht club in California, probably. And people like Shorty Rogers had his boat there. So many people. Dennis Wilson, the Beach Boy that died.
Sure.
Not far from me. And it was just another wonderful lifestyle. Buddy Rich lived up in the Marina Towers. I used to wave to him from my fantail.
Did you get along with Buddy?
Well, we didn't really socialize. He hired me to do his Kathy's album. And I never forget, they asked him, well, how come you didn't play on your kid's album? He said, I wanted the best. I mean, that's how hot I was.
That's really cool.
To get that from Buddy Rich was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And since Buddy died, people have been sending me Buddy Rich tapes like you can't believe, He was a tough hombre, a tough ex-Marine. And nobody messed with him. He'd break your head open.
You ever see anything?
Pardon?
You ever see anything like that? Were you ever around when Buddy...
No, never.
You heard some stories and that was enough?
Oh, that's all you heard were Buddy Rich stories.
So you didn't get to know him? You didn't hang out?
No, we never hung out.
Okay.
He was just super nice to me. Mm-hmm. I know that recently I got a note from Kathy. I had never met her, I don't think. And she was wondering if I would be interested in something. I don't know. I was not interested.
Right.
And I told her thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, sure.
These things come down the pike. I went to 1980. I was with John Denver for 11 years. You couldn't ask for a better job in the world. And we traveled the world. But unfortunately, I met and married what I called the barbarian. And in 1980, I think it was 1980, just as my world was starting to fall apart, because John Denver's world was starting to fall apart, I'm handed a divorce. You got to pay this and this and this. What are you talking about? You have to pay 50% of every penny you ever earned from California.
While you were with her or even before?
No, while you're with her.
Okay.
But everything you had, I mean, we didn't have prenups.
No.
So all the goodies that I had a magnificent Rolls Royce, I'll show you a picture of that car. My Rolls, my beautiful home. I had like 25, 30 rooms, 6 bathrooms, 7 bathrooms, on a half acre in the Hollywood Hills, an amazing Spanish Mediterranean with fruit trees, with avocado trees. You wouldn't the best avocados you've ever eaten. I even had a doghouse. I had 3 dogs, and I had a doghouse made all Spanish Mediterranean with the dog. It's really a shame to lose all of that, and you worked your buns off all those years. But I was not going to write a check, because my business manager told me, he said, you're going to have to write a check for the rest of your life every month, unfortunately, to this woman, because she'll get anything she wants. You owe her a lot of money, 50% of everything you earned. And I said, I'm not writing checks. And he said, well, you're going to pay her cash? I said, yeah, pay her cash. That's it.
One lump sum.
That's exactly what we did. But I had to sell my Rolls. The yacht was repossessed eventually. I was paying $2,500 a month payment on the boat. And I'd only had it a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. My beautiful Rolls Royce that I bought from Warner Brothers, it was an amazing car. I see it all the time in the movies. I had a chance to buy it, and I bought it, $10,000 cash. That car sold recently for about $300,000. I had a call from the auctioneers. It's just a magnificent 1927 Rolls-Royce Phantom 1, left-hand drive, American drive. It was a Springfield Rolls. You have no idea what was in this car from 1927. What a car. Long story. That's when I first got hooked on Palm Springs. Yeah. Because as a member of the Rolls-Royce Owners Club, I was invited down here to the Ehrenberg Estates because they were hosting the Rolls-Royce Owners Club, and the British, whatever he was going to be here to look at all the cars. And I had just bought this car. It's one of the great stories. And it popped and it blew smoke out of the back, and it was filthy. And I had an old pair of army gloves, those green, ugly.
Yeah, sure.
I forget what they call the color. And I drove all the way down here. And I would have to stop about every 10, 12 miles and be sure and keep the oil full because it was burning something terrible. The car had never been into a mechanic to be tuned up or new plugs, or nothing was done. It had a twin electrical system. It had 2 caps, distributor caps. It had assist power brakes, assist power steering. You would not believe this. And we're talking about a convertible rumble seat with the great big tires and the wheel wells. Unbelievable. I show you a picture of this car.
You could pick up any woman with that car.
Never even thought about that. Wasn't even that part of it. Because I have pictures of me in that car. I used to drive the Hollywood Parade every year. I would take whoever I was working with. I took Glenn Campbell one year. I took Shirley Jones one year. Excuse me. The kid, Keith, oh God. 3 or 4 brothers. They actually recorded, and I recorded with them. And I took them, and the little kid that played Grasshopper, whatever that show
was. Kung Fu, Carradine.
The Keith Carradine, right. Yeah. All those brothers. I recorded all those brothers. And the little guy, one year, I asked him if he would ride with me in the roles. He played Grasshopper, nice kid. And he rode with me one year. So for 3 or 4 years, I was every year. But by then, I had the greatest mechanic in the world that did nothing but those cars. And I mean, this was a Rolls Royce, magnificent. My house, I sold. I had bought from Lee J. Cobb.
Oh, the great Lee J. Cobb.
Wonderful actor. I bought that house for about 60 grand cash.
With him? I mean, you gave...
It was a forced sale.
You dealt with Lee J.
Divorce.
Okay.
Same kind of deal.
Unbelievable. Went from one to the other, huh?
And I should have known something about it. Anyway, I sold the house in order to pay her off.
Mm-hmm.
I sold the house for just about what I bought it for, a little less maybe, 55 grand, because there's a punchline here. And I sold the house to Gary Oldman, actor. Yeah.
Oh.
Gary lived there for about 1.5 years, 2 years. He sold it to Ben Stiller. Ben was there, who also was a drummer. Ben was there for a long time. He just sold that place last year for $12 million. And here's the punchline. This barbarian has the nerve to send me an email a few weeks ago. Oh, it was the biggest mistake of my life when we got divorced and we should get together. And
really?
And I said, are you out of your effing mind? That's just what I wrote back. And he said, I never want to hear from you again. And she sent me a note and said, I didn't think you'd still be upset over that. Something like that. And I just bounced it.
Yeah.
And they receive it saying that undeliverable. He refused. That's what it. So that was the end of that. Anyway.
So what year was that, by the way?
That was 1981.
Okay, so where did you go after that, by the way?
I came down here.
In 1981?
I think it was 81. Things started to break up. John Denver got divorced. All his troubles came to a big end.
Mm-hmm.
His wife, Annie, who was just the sweetest lady in the world, they offered her $1 million settlement. She said she just wanted what she had coming, which was $8 million. So that was the end of the band. John went out and did a single for, 3-4 years in order to pay off Annie and the children. They had adopted a couple of children.
Divorce is brutal, huh? Can be.
I don't even want to think about it.
Oh,
it's the most horrendous thing. It's so unfair to a guy who's worked all his life and who's given all of his life and has given that woman her 10 or 11 years of whatever. I mean, I bought her franchises. You had no idea what I bought this woman. Unbelievable.
Never married again? Or you did?
You know, I was married for about 15 minutes and over in Phoenix. I was living in Scottsdale. I met a very nice gal. She was just a very nice gal. She worked at a toy company in L.A. And I met her down at the marina. My buddies, a couple of boats over, this guy and his wife had a very nice houseboat. And she was over visiting them one day, and he introduced me to her. Very nice lady. And the thing that got to me was that whenever I took a cigarette out, she would light my cigarette for me. I thought, boy, this lady really is looking after me. And we got married. And it was for 10 minutes. You know, it just didn't work. I bought a house in Scottsdale, Arizona. I just wanted no part of Hollywood.
Get the hell out.
And that's what I did, but I shouldn't say unfortunately, but fortunately, I was still in a certain amount of demand, and I'm getting calls for clinics and interviews and, nice stuff. And so I find myself, once again, commuting. That's why I never stayed in Palm Springs when I first moved down here. It was a long commute. I mean, it's a two and a half hour drive in those days, and the speed limit was 55. There was no 65.
Were you trying to do that daily? Is that?
I was not necessarily daily.
But 2-3 times a week?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, the nice part about now is that people want me, the limo comes and picks me up.
Yeah.
So I don't have to, do that drive. It's still a long time sitting in the back of a car and wanting to sleep and sitting too long. You get stiff. You're a silly young guy. But believe me, there comes a time when you stand up and you say, Jesus, what's happening? My shoulder, my legs, everything hurts.
Did you ever get pains back when you were playing every day?
Never had a bit of pain.
Interesting. No back, no neck, no hands, no arms.
No, nothing. And my bass drum foot, to this day, this right foot, swollen.
Swollen?
Yep.
From what?
From hitting the bass drum.
I mean, as I was saying, just the muscle, you're saying, just more developed?
Whatever you call it.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I've been to orthopedic guys, and they said, you got a huge leg there. Well, all those years of Taste of Honey and all those great records.
So we can call it Hal Blaine leg if we hear this again.
I guess so, yeah. So I was very fortunate that, I really did reach all the goals that I was after. As a kid, you have certain things in your head, wanting to be a drummer.
Yeah.
And I did become a drummer. And I was fortunate enough to work with all these, one of the things that happened during the 60s and 70s was that it seems like every television show, Bonanza, Lauren Green wanted to record. I had a hit record with him called Ringo. The kid that played the son died.
Michael Landon.
Michael Landon.
Yeah.
Did an album with him.
Yeah.
The comedian actor, she just died. She was a great pianist. Comedian. Funny gal. She used to talk about Fang, her husband, all the time. Can't think of her name now. But all these...
Phyllis
Diller. Exactly. So all these people that we worked with and for, all these actors, they all want to be singers.
And all the musicians didn't want to be actors necessarily.
I don't think so. I mean, the guys, our wrecking crew, our guys couldn't have been happier. They were all enjoying the fruits of what they'd worked for all their lives. To be able, they used to talk about a lot of the classically trained musicians could read music. And one of the gags was, these guys were so good, they could play notes that were actually fly shit on the music. That's how good they were.
Yeah.
And we all strived for that. And luckily, we ran into those situations. When I got to work with, who's the guy that wrote West Side Story?
That guy.
That guy, his brother, big composer out here. That was the hardest thing I ever ran into, was with him. People like Lalo Schifrin, who wrote all this music, but I'm not talking about Lalo.
Right. You're just saying.
That's a whole nother story. Lalo Schifrin, one of the great composers. You know the name. Everybody knows Lalo. Mission Impossible and all this great stuff that he wrote. In odd time signatures. It wasn't just 4, 4, 4, 4. You never knew what you were going to get. Lalo called me one day and he said, Hal, I wonder if you could do me a favor. I know you don't do these things, but I'm doing a major concert at Royce Hall, UCLA, and I would love to have you play drums. I said, sure, I'd be happy to help you. So I went and did this thing. I remember I had a 104-degree temperature. I was sick. But I know I played my ass off. When we finished the concert that night, Lalo was surrounded by press and friends. And he broke out of this group and he came to me and he hugged me. He hugged me. He said, I never heard such playing, a magnifico. And he went nuts. Well, I had never had a call from Lalo, and I never had a call since. I mean, it's funny how this stuff happens.
Yeah.
I know you have your favorites, whatever.
But
anyway, when we had, I did all the Carpenters records.
did she ever play on anything?
I don't know what she did. If she did later on, I don't know. But she was always there with us. She was always singing, because we did this stuff live. Now, she may have overdubbed later voice, I don't know. But the drum parts are mine, there's no question.
Sure.
She even wanted me to get a set of drums like mine, and they did eventually. They built her a
the
set.
concert tom stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the only other set that was ever done was done for Ringo. Because George, I'm working with George, and George wanted those drums for Ringo. He said, I never heard, and I got all these pictures. Well, George is on the wall there on those drums. And we sent Ringo a set. And very recently I saw Ringo with a couple of the drums in the background. So whether he used them, I have no idea.
Was that custom built for you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, we experimented for some time with those drums. And recently, Weird Al Yankovic's drummer,
Bermuda Schwartz.
Bermuda, just had a set of those made because he sent me some pictures of them.
He is our latest episode up now, Bermuda Schwartz. And he talks about that. Yeah, he is.
Just a sweetheart.
Right after you, Hal. He's the nicest guy in the world.
Just a sweetheart, man.
Now, do you remember the sizes of all those?
Well, it started at about 6.
Yeah, I mean,
down to 17.
17.
Yeah.
There's an odd size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Remo was making all the heads special for me.
What was the kick drum size?
I think I was using 22.
That became the standard. Everything was usually done with a 22. Then that kit.
But you got to remember that my drum tech, in quotes, is my good friend Rick Fauché. I met Ricky at a time when I had to have a drum tech, somebody to always set my drums up, because it was impossible for me to do what we called running from session to session.
How many kits did you have?
Well, I had 12 eventually, but we call that dovetailing, because you go from session to session to session to session. And a lot of times, because guys would say, you did how many sessions a day? Actually, one day I did 7 sessions. 3 3-hour sessions and 4 overdub or 1-hour commercials. You know, and that's just the way it was. I mean, I thought nothing of it.
Let me ask you a question. For you said 3 3-hour sessions. Would it be $1,000 for each session, or not quite?
No, some of it was more because I was getting double scale.
So there were days you were making $10,000.
Well, I don't know about that much.
But close enough.
But close enough through the years, because, for an example, with Don Piestrup, we did Alabama gas and power and gas. For 12 years, I was getting checks every 12 weeks or 13 weeks. I was getting 12 checks because we did a 1-hour commercial all those years ago. And they used that commercial all those years. They used the 5s and the 10s and the 20 seconds and the 30 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever.
Did commercials pay the best?
The commercials are the greatest because you work an hour, rarely go over time in it, but you work an hour and you get paid. If it's a hit, it can go on for 12 years. So if you start adding up all that money, and I'm putting $150,000 a year for play money, I was making a lot of money. I had great business managers that handled everything for me. I remember an instant where I got a call from Al Lappin, one of the great contractors. He was at NBC. He was the contractor for The Tonight Show, for an example. He was the contractor when I did Petula Clark and Belafonte. He was the contractor for Elvis, the comeback special we did, 68 comeback special. Well, he came to me early on in my career. Nice Jewish man. Hal, I know you're making all this money now, and I'm sure you're getting deluged with offers, but we're starting a company, and I think it's going to be a big company. So I said, geez, whatever it is, Al, I'll be happy to get involved with you. Get me a prospectus, I'll give it to my business manager. She said, great, which he did. My business manager called me a couple of days later. He said, Hal, this is your money. What you gave me is probably a wonderful offer, but it's a restaurant. Restaurants, he said, all of the research I've done, restaurants last about 6-7 months, and it's gone. Everything's gone. So I told Al in a nice way, and he understood. He said, well, we're all taking a shot on it. He and his son got in on it. Well, it turned out to be International House of Pancakes.
Get the... Oh, come on.
But, oddly enough, Al and his son went broke because something happened, and it didn't happen. Eventually, it did.
I understand. So they, okay.
But they lost a lot.
Okay. So you wouldn't have, you're saying, had you been...
Exactly.
I got
exactly.
You. Okay.
So my guys, oddly enough, the guy that handled my stuff was Norman Greenbaum, but he was not the singer who had the hit record.
Spirit in the Sky, Norman.
So anyway, that was the record business in those days. It's all changed today. The studios are all gone.
Do you talk to any guys who, session guys today? Do you talk to them? I mean, about the way things are and...
Not really, because the guys that I was involved with, Tedesco, Bill Pittman, Barney Kessel's died. Excuse me. So many of the guys have passed away, so there's no talking to them. I do see Bill Pittman once in a while, who lives down here. He's a golf nut.
So it's not like you're talking to guys, though, that are working today and they'll call you or come to you and say, hey...
Well, at this big party the other day, Tim May was there, one of the great guitar players. Even he said nothing's shaking anymore.
Yeah.
All these guys who, became right after sort of with me. I mean, we happened to all work together. But then when I retired, they were still working to a certain extent. But even they're not working. And everybody, when I do talk to guys sometimes, like Tim May, nobody was more busy than Tim. And still, they're lucky enough to do the Academy Awards once a year, and some of the award shows that the contractors can count on them. Good players. But that used to be Tedesco and Barney Kessel, Howard Roberts, all those great guitar players. The drummers, a lot of them have died off, unfortunately.
But none of the current guys, you don't talk to any of them?
I never do.
Not Vinny Colaiuta?
Well, Vinny and I have the same birthday. Vinny keeps blaming me. He keeps saying, this is the guy that started it all, did it all. We both have the same February 5th birthday. Vinny is just the nicest guy in the world. Great drummer. I just did this new thing called Drum Talk for DW Drums. Now, I'm not an endorser of DW, but Chad Smith, the Chili Peppers drummer, or used to be, Chicken Foot, and where they get these names, I don't know. But he is doing a kind of a talk show now.
Yeah.
And
he stole my format.
Oh, no kidding.
No, that was a joke.
Okay. Bada boom. Greg Bissonette was there, so it was Chad and Greg, and I don't know if I was the pilot, if it was the first show, I don't know. But Chad had asked for me. They sent a limo for me. I mean, it was beautiful, And it was at DW up in Oxnard.
Yeah.
And if you know that place at all, it's a magnificent place. They've put a television studio into the next building.
Drum channel or something, yeah.
Whatever, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So it was great. It was just wonderful. And, and several times through the years I've talked to Don Lombardi, who said, "Why aren't you with DW?" And I said, "I haven't had an offer." Because I was with Rogers, I was with Ludwig, I was with Mapex, I was with Pearl, all these companies that came along and offered me the world. Well, I happened to be the hot guy at the time, but none of them ever came through with the promises. I didn't need them. It wasn't like, I need you, please.
Did you keep using the same kits in the studio, though, regardless of what company you were with?
Well, when I designed my Monster drums, and that was in about, the early 60s, I wanted a full octave of drums to play musically. And in those days, it was a 4-piece set or a 5-piece set. That was it. You had one tom-tom or two tom-tom, and a floor tom-tom, of course. So you had a snare drum, and that was it. So you had 4 or maybe 5. The jazz, they called it a jazz set. A 4-piece set was a jazz set. A 5-piece set was sort of a rock set. And then I came along. Now you have 12 drums. You could really, play. Well, just listen to the Carpenters records. The stuff that I did with the Carpenters was magnificent. And I don't mean it braggadocio, but it was just beautiful.
The tom
stuff.
sounds on Close to You, forget it.
Exactly.
And by the way, is that taped up? Or are they just wide open? I mean, what was did you tape up heads? Did you?
Well, the way I tuned them a certain way. And that came from experimentation. I started out with a set of timbales, and Ricky put a tom-tom holder on the little one and legs on the floor tom-tom. And the first record I ever did with them was Frankie Lane's Don't Make My Baby Blue. So if you ever hear that song, you'll hear the beginnings of my Monster set. I found that by loosening the heads on the timbales, I get some decay, little fall off, boom, boom. Today, electronically, you can go all day. But that was a new thing. And so I wanted a whole octave of those things. And musically, people ask me, how do you tune them? Well, you got 4 drums, and it's so simple. It's soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, and that's exactly what you have. And so they kind of understand that. And I tune mine in fourths. Doom, doom. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put it, that way for people who even know what I'm talking about. But now I had an octave that I wanted that with the decay, boom, 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 and you heard that on a lot of records with Cher, with Cherokee and
Cherokee Nation.
whatever.
Yeah.
And who was the other guy? I did one of those long runs also an Indian type thing. The Raiders, Paul Revere and the Raiders, whatever their record was. Anyway, that really did change the drum world, because I introduced those drums on an Ed Sullivan special, Sunday night special. I did a number with Nancy Sinatra called Drummer Man. Great record.
Yeah.
Great record. And we did a great version of it. And that really showed off those drums for the first time. And that had to be about, 1964, something like that. 65, whatever it was. There are other drummers out there claiming they had the first rack toms, but they really didn't, And so Hal Blaine made those shells for me.
Hal Blamer?
I believe that's his name.
Hal Blamer and Hal Blaine.
Yeah.
Working together.
Well,
that's beautiful.
I tell you, the other thing that happened to me, I just realized the other day, talking to my son-in-law, Andy. I was born in Holyoke, Massachusetts. We moved to Hartford, Connecticut. I wound up in Hollywood, California. And my name is Hal. 4 H's. And he was saying, you could have been a country star, the 4-H Club. Oh, wow.
By the way, when I spoke to James Gadsden, he told me there was a session he was doing where he needed a lot of toms. And he said, you heard about this and you left your kit set up for him.
Could be. I used to help out whoever I could.
Did anyone ever do that for you when you were coming up?
Not on purpose. A couple of times I'd get home midnight, 1 in the morning. The phone rings. Ben Barrett, contractor. Hal, I hate to bother you. I know you just left, but so-and-so didn't show up. We're at Western, United One, whatever. There's drums set up here.
Gotcha.
The guy never showed. Please get here. And I remember I went down, because I lived 5 minutes from any studio. 5 minutes.
Were you in the Valley?
No, in the Hollywood Hills.
Oh, Hollywood Hills is still in the hills.
Any studio I could get there in 5 minutes. And you saw the movie how Tedesco explained how he'd get a call and he'd say, yeah, I'll be there as quick as I can. But other guys that they called before or since, they say, well, I'm having dinner right now and I've got to read a book to my kid, but then I'll get there as quick as well, forget it. We need somebody right this minute. So Tommy and I had that thing going because I was there in 5 minutes. If I had to go all the way to Culver City, it took a little longer. But that rarely happened that way. My Culver City MGM calls were usually a morning or mid-morning type call. So I had plenty of time to get there. And the traffic at that time wasn't nearly what it is today.
Let me ask you
but I wanted to tell you, this is hysterical. Because I went in, Ben Barrett, who was one of the big contractors, I went in that day to United, I think it was United, and here was Earl's drums. It was Earl Palmer.
Okay.
Earl never showed up. And I think, he had a commercial, a 1-hour commercial at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. And these people were coming from New York. And it turned out, as I recall, it was the first Burger King commercial. Boy, did Earl miss a big one. It was gigantic.
Earl picked the wrong session.
And I was playing Earl's, they were Earl's drums. And then it happened one other time, and it was also Earl. He had gone to a movie with his girlfriend or something, completely forgot he had a date. This was a morning, no, this was a different one, at A&M. I was only 3 minutes from A&M. And I used to work there all the time with everybody, from Herb to everybody. Captain and Tennille, all those people at A&M I was working with. Herb used to love to call me his drummer. So he would recommend me sometimes to people, needed a drummer at A&M. So I remember I get to A&M, and I forget what the product was, but it was like a 1-hour commercial. They called me at about 10 minutes after. I was there within 10 minutes. In another 15 minutes, it was in the can, and I was out of there before the hour was even up. And I think that was Earl Palmer. And Earl, for some reason, didn't make it, forgot about it, whatever it was, and I did it on Earl's drums. And another thing is that all the drummers in town, as I got hot, the guys at the drum shop will tell you, they were all buying blue Ludwig drums, and I had blue sparkle drums. That's what Ludwig gave me. They were giving me all kinds of drums. My John Denver set were Ludwig drums, but they were raw. And John Denver had them all done up in American Indian headdress motif. Beautiful drums. They went up to Mike McGaffin up in Canada. I forget the name of the little town. It's not a little town. It's a big town. It's 2 words. Anyway, Mike McGaffin is the Honda dealer up in Nova Scotia. That's what it is. Nova Scotia. And Mike has bought 2 sets of my drums from different people, or maybe more. He's a collector. 1 set of my monster drums are in the NAMM Museum in Carlsbad. Beautiful place, gorgeous place. The other set is in Don Bennett's drum studios up in Seattle. He just sold out. He is retired, but he's still taking students and kind of helping them manage the place. A set of my Mapex drums are in the Moscow Hard Rock Cafe. I've had my friends, unbelievable, Pam Jacobs and Jake Jacobs, great drummers, both of them, terrific people. They came back from Russia on a trip, and they said, your drums are in the... I didn't know it. I think it was Don Bennett who sold them to whoever. They're on the wall in the Hard Rock Cafe. I thought that was hysterical, and they sent me pictures of the drums.
Do you have any kits left?
I have 1 set right now in my garage in beautiful cases that I was endorsing that company, and they're called Thai, T-A-Y-E. The Thai musical instrument company. They've made magnificent, all the brass instruments, the trumpets, the everything. And several years ago, they started with drums. They started making drums. Yeah. And I think they're absolutely beautiful. But you see, Ricky Fauché, my drum tech, very sharp kid, great ears, etc., etc. He took care of my drums like they were children. He lived in Silver Lake. He had a great big backyard, and I could go over there anytime. I'd drop in sometimes if I wasn't working during the day. I would drop in, he'd have a whole set of drums taken apart completely, every nut, every bolt. What are you doing, Ricky? Well, I'll show you. Now, when it comes to drums, you have hardware that holds down the drum head. Well, inside of that hardware, for tightening the heads, are springs. And unbeknownst to most drummers, they don't know, maybe they don't care, if you hit the drum, there are sympathetic vibrations that go through the drums. Well, you might have 8 or 16 with 2 heads of those.
Sure.
16 springs now. When you hit the drummer going, He wrapped every spring with moleskin. so that the drum had no sympathetic vibrations whatsoever. And that was part of my sound. And that was Ricky's work. He did that to the bass drums, to the snare drums. He did it to every drum. He wrapped every spring. There was never a... engineers loved him.
I'm thinking right now so many guys are going to hear this and they're going to say,
well,
we got moleskin on the springs going.
Well, hopefully drum companies will understand some of that.
Sure.
But there are a lot of drummers that want that.
Yeah.
That Benny Benjamin, that was doing the Motown stuff. You can hear that sloppy sound. And that's wonderful. That was his sound, and that's his. There are drummers that want that. I didn't want it. I wanted the clearest bell sound you could hear. My cymbals I got in the 40s. Ricky used to take my cymbals and bury them in the sand at his house, sometimes for weeks at a time, and it would fill all the grooves. And it made the most beautiful sound you ever heard in your life.
Where did he learn that trick?
I don't know. It took the curse off of, a lot of cymbals, when you buy a cymbal and you hit it, it's not exactly the sound you want, or even the sound you like. But Ricky learned. He used to go to these places that had walnut shells, where they have a gun that blows these walnut shells, takes the curse off of a cymbal. He would go through every cymbal and make sure that it was exactly the sound I wanted. That's it, baby, we got it. It was wonderful. Ricky was just an amazing kid. I still think of him as a kid.
Did you ever settle on one snare, or not really?
I didn't know any nomenclatures of any drum I had. Guys come up to me, did you use that JY317? I don't know what you're talking about. I hit a snare drum and that was it. Give me a drum, I'll tune it the way I like it. I don't care what the company is, the color, metal, wood, I don't care what it is. Thai was very nice. They made me a beautiful wooden snare drum with a nice plaque presented to me, and that's with my set in the Nashville Hall of Fame, in the Musicians Music. They're getting ready to reopen this unbelievable. You wouldn't believe Nashville, the money that they put into this new museum. It is gorgeous.
Let me ask you something. Did any guys back then have a rehearsal spot? Like any drummers that you knew?
A rehearsal?
Mm-hmm. Like a spot, a place where they had their drums set up and they went to do shedding or work. Did that exist at all?
When it came to wood shedding, as we call practicing, I never went through that. I don't know.
All the guys today have them. Do you know that? Like the guys who are the big cats of our time now, they have woodsheds.
The thing is, a lot of those guys have garages, and they have their own tape machines.
Well, that too. But I mean, like a separate, also sometimes a rehearsal spot.
Well, that I don't know.
No, I'm just saying that never happened, right, in your time.
I recorded in a number of garages where guys now have their own recording equipment. Mm-hmm. I imagine they practice on their drums. Some of them have drums there already.
But you didn't have time to practice, am I right? Or
I never thought about it.
That's what I'm saying.
I got pictures of me in swimming pools practicing on a rubber pad. I swear to God. Practice was very important to me.
It was.
That was the first, my early days of learning music and learning drums.
Once
and wanting to be a drummer.
Once you were working, forget it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to blow my nose.
Do it. Here's a question. When you couldn't do a session, who was the first guy? Who was your first call?
Well, I was recommending Jim Keltner.
How'd you get to know Jim?
I don't remember where we met. Oh, I think we met when I was doing Gary Lewis and the Playboys.
Okay.
And Jim became their road drummer. And eventually he was doing some records with them. Gary Lewis was on a show recently. I got several calls. And they said, your friend Gary Lewis is out there telling everybody that he did all of his own records. And I said, I know. He said that for years. But the industry knows who really played. It was me. I got all those pictures of me with Leon Russell was arranging. Snuff Garrett was producing. We did it all at Western 3 because that's where we were doing the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean and the Mamas and the Papas and Barry McGuire. The kid that just died, Wear Some Flowers in Your Hair.
Going to San Francisco?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did something like 70, 71 or 72 groups in Western 3. Johnny Rivers. That was an amazing little studio. It was a small studio. And Brian Wilson loved that studio, and that's where we were doing Brian's stuff.
Keltner, that you're saying that
Keltner?
He was the guy you'd call first.
He was the guy, I'm trying to think. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But I'm pretty sure it was Jim. I'd have to look through some of those names to try and remember.
Right. Yeah.
I wish I could.
And I was going to ask you also, before you mentioned getting phone calls from studios. I mean, obviously back then, no cell phones, no pagers. Was it a question of when you weren't working, did you try to be home to get a call? Did you have, you know what I'm trying to say?
We had an answering service.
But how would they find you? If, in other words, if they needed you in the next half hour?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, my secretary, Arlen George, she had the musicians answering service. Everybody belonged to that service. And Arlen George had my book. She did all my booking. She knew who I would and would not work for.
Oh, so she said yes or no for you?
Always. And she knew exactly where I was at the time. So if I got an emergency call, she could call the studio instantly and say, get to Mr. Blaine in studio so-and-so, tell him it's an emergency to call the service immediately.
Gotcha.
One of the great stories, it's one of the funniest stories. I mean, maybe you had to be there to appreciate it. But one night, we were doing some big major Atlantic group. And we were on La Brea at Atlantic Records. They used to have a big studio there. And it was an all-nighter. So it was about, I don't know, maybe 2 in the morning. And we would take a break, and there's either a telephone there, direct line to the service, or in those days, you could pick up any phone in an office and call your service. You call the service, and they'd say, Arlen's, or they'd say, service. You say, this is Hal Blaine, any messages? They'd say, hold on, Hal. And they'd come back and say, you have a message from Arlen, call her in the morning. Okay. Or they might say, there are no messages at this time. Or generally, if there was nothing, they'd say, you're all clear now. That was it. Thank you. So Victor Feldman was a great English percussionist. We used to do a lot of work with Vic. He was a great guy, sweetheart of a guy. So this one night, I'll never forget, we're at Atlantic for, I forget his name now, he just died.
Ahmet?
What was his name?
Erdogan.
Ahmet Erdogan.
Yeah.
That's who we're working for. And we're doing whatever the session was. I forget who it was. I think it was a New York group or something. And we took a break, 2:30 in the morning, whatever it was. Everybody's tired. And I hear Victor Feldman. And I hear him say, we all knew what was going on. I hear him say, Feldman, Victor. Of course I'm a member. Feldma. This girl is a new girl or something. And he says, I've been with the service for 7 years. Now you must have something on me. And finally he takes the phone, puts it up to his rear end. He passes the biggest gas you've ever heard. He comes back to the phone and he says, you're all clear now. And he hangs up. That's one of the funniest things that ever happened. I mean, there were a lot of things that have happened through the years that have become iconical. I guess that's the word. The famous line when we went to Disney. We got a call at Disney. Bob Bruner, I think it was, conductor. They're doing a movie, and they wanted the Wrecking Crew. They'd heard about the Wrecking Crew, and when we arrived around 11:30 in the morning, it was a 12 o'clock call, and we were always early. Very responsible, very reliable, and we were already doing a lot of dates. We're doing movies, television, commercials, everything. And we come into this date, and they're just releasing a big orchestra. I don't know how many guys. I mean, it looked like 100 guys. It was probably 50, 60 guys, all string players and all that. They're doing a movie. And he's making a speech, or the contractor was. You guys now have 2 hours for lunch. We're going to let these kids learn this part for a couple hours and memorize it. You guys will be back. Okay? We go in. We're in our Levi's and T-shirts. They're all in their blue blazers, 3-piece suits with, neckties. They never speak. Everyone smokes. They're very careful with the cigarettes. And this conductor says, fellas, we've called you in here. Uh-oh. Is that them? No, I was talking about the Disney call.
The Disney call.
We get a call, and so Bob Bruner, the conductor, we're sitting down, the Wrecking Crew. It was me, Leon Russell, Tommy Tedesco, Ray Pullman, who was always on Fender bass, not Carol Kay.
I was going to say, what about Carol?
No.
No, what? A myth? Not as integral to it?
Carol Kay has played on every record since Edison invented the machine. Just ask her. She'll tell you. Enough said. She's now knocking the Wrecking Crew, saying there never was a Wrecking Crew, that we were known as the Click. Nobody's ever heard of the Click. You have no idea. I could go on and on and on. And so Mr. Bruno says, gentlemen, we've called you here because we want some of your rock and roll music in this movie that we're doing. There is a scene with a bunch of monkeys in a car, and somehow they get out and they tantalize this little city, whatever it is. And this is Herbie the car, the first one.
Herbie the Love Bug.
Or the Love Bug, I don't know.
That's Buddy Hackett.
Buddy Hackett, exactly.
Yeah.
That was another coincidence. And we're all listening to Mr. Bruner. Okay, Mr. Bruner, yes. And he said, now you've got music in front of you, and we're going to use a click track. Now, don't let it frighten you. They don't know we're working click tracks every day, whatever, movies, television. So he says, we're going to slow it down real slow so you can learn, just watch the music. He doesn't know we're all graduates of music schools. We know what we're doing. And so he tells the lady to be sure and slow down the click so that these guys can learn the music. They'll memorize it. The only one that did really need to memorize was Glenn Campbell. And he had it. He heard it once, and he has it. And then when it came to a solo, if there was a solo part, one of us would point to him so he'd know. And he used to play the wildest solos you ever heard in your life. I mean, you think Jimi Hendrix was wild. Glenn Campbell was unbelievable. Still is. I just did that thing with him. He still is. Anyway, so we're listening to him. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Rock and roll. Click track. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, now this big orchestra left, but a few guys hung around. They wanted to see what this rock and roll thing was all about. And so he tells the lady, go ahead and play the click track. Well, the minute we hear click, 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 we do 5, 6, 7, 8, boom, it was the proper click. And we played it from the beginning, well over 100 bars. We played it perfectly. And when we finished, this conductor he couldn't believe what he had just heard. And he said, I wish we'd have made that. That was perfect. How did you guys do that? And that's when Tommy Tedesco stood up like a little fat kid. Well, sir, we practiced a lot during the day. Well, that became our by phrase or whatever for years. When a composer would say, that's it, great, that was perfect, guys. I don't know how you did it, but it's great. And somebody always say, or sometimes 4 guys at a time would say, we practice a lot during the day. We always had it. But we were hearing some of these wonderful guys who've been in all the MGM movies and 20th Century Fox, these great epics in Paramount. We heard them saying these kids are going to wreck the business. And I just automatically started calling us the Wrecking Crew. And I told Arlen, at the service, we're the Wrecking Crew now. Now this has to be about 1958, 59, 60, something like that. So we're now the Wrecking Crew. And and Arlen was getting calls for the Wrecking Crew. The word got around so fast. We had so many hit records with Phil Spector, with the Beach Boys, with Johnny Rivers, with the Mamas and the Papas. Everybody. We were having hit record after hit record. I had something like 140 gold records on my walls at home that I had to sell, unfortunately. In fact, one of them came back to me. It's on my walls in here. It was I think it's a John Denver record, and I'll show it to you pretty soon. But Bermuda Shorts, God bless him. Bermuda.
He bought it to get it back to you.
Exactly.
Love that guy.
And I didn't know Bermuda. And Pam Jacobs, who's a great drummer, beautiful redhead, she was in a lot of those girls' hair bands. She's just a great chick. She was one of the very first Playboy bunnies in Philadelphia, or in Harrisburg, or wherever it was, in Pennsylvania. Anyway, she's the one that called me one day, and she said, there's a good friend of ours having a birthday, and he just loves you. If you could just come to the birthday party. It was a Saturday night or something. I said, yeah, I'm not doing anything. And we went to Bermuda's house in Torrance. Met Leslie, his wonderful wife, sweetheart of a lady, and everything. We had a great party, and as we were leaving, Bermuda says, before you go, this is for you. And he hands me this beautiful wrapped package. I said, what are you talking about? This is your birthday. No. He said, this is yours. You should have this. I said, well, gosh, thanks so much. And we opened it up, and it was one of my John Denver gold records.
You had sold it.
It was magnificent. What a sweetheart of a guy.
He really is.
And I've kept it, of course. It's on my wall. But I had about 140 of those, 135 around.
Were they all hanging on a wall? Every one of those 140?
They were all over my big house in Hollywood.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of rooms.
Yeah.
How many rooms does it take to put 140 gold records on?
Well, I don't know, but that house had something like either 28 or 30 rooms. There were 7 bathrooms, 6 upstairs, 1 in the basement, for the people who, if there were people living there, there actually were not people. There were bedrooms there for help, but I didn't have help living there.
Right.
The nurse that was there when my daughter was born, she had her own room upstairs, and we had a housekeeper, and she had her own room, but they were never in the basement. I had a wine cellar there. I had magnificent garage. I had electric door openers that never beat long before Genie. Nobody ever heard of a garage door opener, but General Motors had a special radio unit that went in a car and opened your garage door. That's when the Rolling Stones came to the house one time, and they couldn't believe, because the great story is, it's really a movie. When we left the Tammy show, I forget which theater it was, but the guys had to escape. So Jack Nietzsche, the great arranger that did all the Spectre stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Jack said, Hal, drive up to your house quick, and we'll get out of this mess. Thousands of kids, and they want the Rolling Stones. And so we jump, and I had a big Cadillac. We jump in my car, the Stones, myself, and I drive straight up. Oh, God, what's the name of that street? 30 years I was driving up and down that street. Outpost Drive in Hollywood. I don't know if you know Hollywood. You know,
I do.
Outpost Drive, just below Mulholland, there's a street that turns to the right called Castilian Drive. And right on that corner, where you turn right, that was my property there, almost an acre. And I have this magnificent Spanish Mediterranean home. And so all these cars are following us. And as I approach my street, Castilian Drive, I'm hitting the hidden button I hit. And as I come around, it's open. I drive right in, hit the button, the garage goes back down, and all these cars that are chasing us continue up to on Mulholland. So the Stones can't believe what they just witnessed.
It's like Batman.
How'd you do that, love? I mean, they were flipped out. They'd never seen an automatic garage door opener. And Mr. Comedy, well, this car, my house knows my car whenever I come here. Isn't that fantastic? My God. I said, hey, you don't really believe that shit, I got a hidden button right here. And Charlie Watts was so fascinated, he had to sit there for a half hour and make it go up and make it go down. He just loved it. He was a sweetheart. They were all, and this was when Brian, the kid, was still with him.
Brian was there. Wow.
Nice looking kid. And they were all just sweethearts. And they loved that house. They loved that fucking house. Well,
no, you can say that. Absolutely, say it.
They loved that house, as everyone, whoever came to that house, mamas and papas. Brian Wilson practically lived at that house. I mean, I had a piano in the living room. He loved that piano, and he used to sit there and play. And my little baby, Michelle, would sit on his lap, sit on his knee, off to the side while he played.
Yeah.
I mean, the great Brian Wilson is playing the piano, and this little kid is hanging. That's when Brian brought all these gold records over to me one day and hid them behind the couch. It's a way long story. But I had these magnificent, from Capitol Records. They were made out to Brian. They're not made out to me. I said, I can't take these records, Brian. These are yours. They go to your house. And he loved my house. He wanted the same pool company that put in the pool. That kind of stuff. On and on and on and on. Brian was just a sweetheart. He was pretty much deaf in one ear.
Really?
His father had hit him with a 2x4 when they were kids somehow. Bashed him in the head, and he blew out an eardrum. He was 99 or 98 or 99% deaf in that ear. right or left.
You were there for that when his father was there in the studio, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Was he really a pain in the ass?
Well, it all depends on who's right and who's wrong.
What did you think as a witness? Like, what did you feel? Did you think he was...
I felt that he was being very hard on Brian because he had written a song once, a simple little, as we used to refer to as a little Ricky Tick song. And Lawrence Welk recorded it. So now he's a big-time songwriter. Well, he wanted most of Brian's music to sort of be that way, I guess. Because he would say things to Brian like, yeah, you think you're a big shot now, you got a recording contract, but you'll go right down the tubes with this kind of music, this kind of stuff. The old man didn't know what he was hearing when we were doing these wonderful songs that every kid in America eventually was singing. Girls, girls, girls.
Sure. California Girls. Or...
California Girls.
Yeah, sure.
All this great surfing type beach, California, beach, sun, hot rods, surfing.
Yeah.
Love, teenage love. That's what it was all about. And on the other hand, we had Jimmy Webb, whose heart was broken by Susie, the girl that he was so nuts for, that he wrote all these songs for, who eventually vanished. But Jimmy became the biggest songwriter in the world. Took me to England when we did Richard Harrison and MacArthur Park. Singular, MacArthur Park, not MacArthur's Park. It was like Paul Simon used to say, bridge over troubled water, not waters.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's funny because we recorded a song in my living room. I told you, this house that I loved. When we did a television show at one point, I don't know, 15, 18 concerts all over the United States. Well, when we came to L.A., it was home for me, of course, and Paul wanted to sing. Paul wanted to record a particular song at one of the Frank Lloyd Wright houses.
Okay.
And it was the song Frank Lloyd Wright that he had written for Artie when they were both in college. It's a beautiful song. It's really a beautiful song. And so that the PR people at Columbia called around to all these people that handle those kind of homes. They couldn't find one home that would allow Simon Garfunkel to record in that house. Nobody would allow it. Well, just about the last home he ever built happened to be just catty corner out of my backyard to a house, one of the last Frank Lloyd Wright houses. It belonged to Beverly Johnson, as I recall was her name, nice neighbor lady, and she was the art editor and critic of the LA Times. So I had a nice talk with her about any chance of, and she was very sorry she couldn't do that because she had millions of dollars in art in her home.
Sure.
She just could not do it.
Absolutely.
And it was all explained to Paul, and he understood. But I said, Paul, it might sound nuts to you, but when I open these French windows, there's the house. Let's record the goddamn song right here in the living room. Perfect. Well, he's looking at the house. And we did. It's on a video somewhere. I've seen parts of it. Because I'm sitting there doing a crossword puzzle. Used to keep my head clear. But anyway, that's what happened. And it was just a thing recently. Excuse me, got the hiccups. There was a thing recently about Bridge Over Troubled Water, and the guy apologized. Oh, I know what it was. Jeopardy. The very last song, the last question or statement was, what was the song that drummer Hal Blaine played his tire chains on? I got it on the wall. I'll show it to you.
I didn't know you were on Jeopardy. A Jeopardy question.
This is unbelievable. And they said, and the guy couldn't answer the question. There were a bunch of them. Wrecking Crew question category. So they went to commercial. I was flipped out because we knew it was going to happen, and I taped it. So when they came back after commercial, what's his name, the Jeopardy guy?
Alex
Trebek. He said, I have to make a
correction?
A correction. He said, we refer to the song as Bridge Over Troubled Waters. He said, it's actually Bridge Over Troubled Water. So he cleared that up. But that was on TV, the whole thing. Well, I couldn't believe it. You're going to have to look at that photograph. It's unbelievable. Take a picture of it. There it was. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Jeopardy. Done a lot of television, but never that. Anyway. So, I mean, we're talking about 50 years of recording and etc. I was having breakfast at IHOP this morning, and this happens once in a while. Somebody comes over and says, excuse me, are you Hal Blaine? I said, yes. You know, he was a nice guy with his wife having breakfast. And he had recently saw the movie or something, or heard about the movie. I guess he saw the movie. His name was Mark. And his wife's name was Shayna, I think, something like that. Pretty lady, nice looking guy. And I mean, those things happen. And oddly enough, I was sitting in the same IHOP. This is about 7-8 years ago, not long after I moved there to Palm Desert. I'm sitting at another area of the hotel, of the IHOP, and I'm having breakfast. And some guy walks over, falls to his knees, starts crying. This was during Coachella Fest.
Yeah.
They have this big rock thing. This kid would recognize me, and he couldn't believe he was looking at me in the restaurant. And he was there with two of the other very nice kids. I still have their names and addresses in my little book. So those things happen. But that happens to me quite often. Just people that say, hey, I saw you in the movie, or I heard the record.
Sure.
That happens when
you're a bona fide celebrity.
Hey, when you're a celebrity, that's what happens. I always use slob instead of celebrities. It always gets a laugh. Well,
I did want to ask you one thing. Did you get to know Frank Sinatra?
Not only did I get to know Frank Sinatra, we both married Barbara's just about the same time. And then we were on the road together the same time.
His was Barbara Marx, correct?
That's correct.
Harpo's ex, right?
Not Harpo.
Seppo.
Seppo's.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Now, so you hung with Frank?
Well, I can't say I hung with them. But he knows that I'm Nancy's drummer all those years.
Sure.
He knew the Wrecking Crew. He knew all of us real well. Don Randy was conducting for Nancy all those years. Billy Strange, well, he passed away. Myself, Louis Shelton was playing guitar, great guitarist. He knew of our, we were in Vegas, we broke all records. It was an amazing time. The Ed Sullivan Show, all the stuff we did, Frank knew everything. It's one of the great stories. Frank Sinatra, obviously, chairman of the board. But we went on the road. I was with John Denver. Irv Kotler's playing drums with Frank Sinatra. And we're doing the dinner show, and they're doing the late show. And so all these jokes are going on about the Barbaras. Hey, Barbara's going to blah, blah, blah. And Barbara, hey, Hal, Barbara's blah, blah, blah. You know, all these jokes are going back and forth between Frank and me and a lot of the guys yelling and talking about Barbaras. And oddly enough, I think they both turned out to be barbarians. One of those names.
Well, he was with Barbara to the end, wasn't he?
They were married a long time, yeah.
Yeah.
And, well, that's all water under the bridge.
Yeah, sure,
you know,
sure.
Not a lot I can say about that.
Right.
And I talk to Nancy quite often. She's now living down here.
Yeah.
Very close to the Edinburgh estate, which is, Frank lived right next door to the Annenberg estate, his compound, and that's at the Tockwitz racket or tennis clubs or something like that. But Frank bought condos for all the children and Nancy, his first wife, all paid for, etc., etc. And Nancy recently moved down permanently. She used to just come down on vacation. But she recently moved down here on Frank Sinatra Drive. She's in her condo. Yeah, beautiful place. I was over there when she was moving in. And Nancy is just one of the sweetest ladies you'll ever meet. She's just a sweetheart. And oddly enough, I go back to the 50s with Nancy because she married Tommy Sands. Guess who was exactly? And that's one of the great stories of how I met Frank Sinatra.
Because you were with Tommy Sands and he was married to Nancy and...
No, not even quite that. But when Tommy was married to Nancy, it was a 10-minute marriage, you know, a Hollywood marriage. But we used to come down here and hang out at Frank's compound. Frank was on the road all the time. So at one point, before Tommy and Nancy married, Nancy was on the road with us, with her mom as a chaperone. Big Nancy, we called her.
Mm-hmm.
And Nancy was not singing. She was just Tommy Sands' betrothed, as it would be.
Okay.
And we were playing all these amazing hotels, etc. Tommy Sands was the biggest star in the world at the time. He was absolutely gorgeous. He looked like a young Frank Sinatra in his tuxedo. And we were doing a lot of great pop songs along with rock and roll songs, where the guys would come out and play the guitars with the red jackets. So it was rock and roll. But Tommy was a very fine singer. You know, we did an album called Sands at the Sands. Somewhere. It's a great album. It's a great album. And at one point, Nancy was in the audience and you could hear her going, "Oh no!" because there was some comedy going on. So I asked Nancy about that recently. I was really kind of shocked. I said, "Nancy, you know, I've heard that album, Sands at the Sands, and not to bring up anything, but I distinctly hear your voice laughing, and I know it was you." She said, "Yeah, it took about 4 takes." I said, "You're kidding." She said, "No." So even in those days,
gotcha,
things were being done. Anyway, and I got cold drinks if you want anything. There's stuff in the refrigerator.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We were in, I think it was the Diplomat or the Fontainebleau Hotel. We had like the upper floor in Miami. I guess it's Miami. And Tommy is appearing at the hotel, and Tommy and Nancy have an engagement party. Stephen Eady,
Rickles?
Buddy Hackett. No, not Rickles.
Okay.
Buddy Hackett was there. This comedian and his wife Frenchie. It's a funny guy. I can't think of his name. I got pictures of him somewhere. A lot of celebrities. As a matter of fact, Oh, and I saw Buddy Hackett there. And I hadn't seen Buddy in maybe 6, 7, 8 years. Now he's a big movie star. And I'm a drummer with a big act. So that was a great thing, which I can tell you about off screen, off camera.
Right.
Off tape, I mean. Anyway, so at one point, a maid comes in, and she's to Big Nancy, and she says, Mrs. Sinatra, Mr. Sinatra's calling from Germany on the telephone. Well, unbeknownst to me, there had been a columnist who wrote a column. Who's this new foursome around town, or on the beach, or something like that? Tommy Sands and Nancy Sinatra and Big Nancy Sinatra and Tommy's young, handsome drummer, Hal Blaine.
Ooh.
Holy Jesus.
Oh, God.
Pretty scary.
You're going to that hideout out in...
Victorville. And so I didn't think much about it, but Big Nancy grabbed me and drug me into the bedroom where she picked up the phone and said, "Hi, honey. Yeah, the kids are having a wonderful party. They're nuts about each other, young kids can't keep their hands off each other." And she said, "No, I didn't say anything," talking about the newspaper. And she said, "Frank, what are you talking about? Are you believing that crap that's how many times have they written crazy stories about you, about any of us? When did you start believing all this stuff?" "No, he's a baby. He's a drummer. He's a very nice kid. Here, you talk to him." And that's when I met Frank Sinatra. And I said, "Hi, Mr. Sinatra, this is Mr. Blaine." And he said, "Listen, kid, be sure and look after the kids. Wherever you go, sign my name. Always leave a big tip. And I'll see you when I get back." And I said, "Thank you, Mr. Sinatra, thank you." And he said something like, "That's Frank." I said, "Okay, great, thank you very much." And I gave him back to Nancy, and I left the bedroom. I don't know what was, they wanted to talk about. But they were divorced, but Frank was still like the hubby. So that's when I met Frank Sinatra. And he always called me Hallie, as I recall, or Blaney, or both. And then, of course, when I started recording with him, that's a whole nother story. When he would come into the studio, he was just so friendly and so perfect with the hat and the coat and the whole thing. And it was always a 6-hour call, 7-hour call. No. Yeah. 3-hour rehearsal, 1-hour dinner, 3-hour session. 7 hours. And you didn't do any other session in the world like a Frank Sinatra session. Because we went in, Jimmy Bowen was producing, great producer, man. I'm so glad that Frank hooked up with Jimmy Bowen and let him produce. Because we did all the Rat Pack. We did Dean, Sammy, we did everybody. Louis, Keeley, all of those people that Frank worked with in Vegas, and he was signing all the Las Vegas great acts. Mm-hmm. And so the first 3 hours we rehearsed the music. During that 3 hours, there were people walking around to hear if chairs were squeaking, if all of the plugs were right for all the microphones, etc., etc. And you went through 3 hours of that with 5-minute or 10-minute breaks for a cigarette or whatever. And then you had a dinner break. While we were going to dinner, they did again. Checked all the chairs for squeaks or any noises. Checked all the cables, all the microphones, so there was nothing broken or could break. Mm-hmm. And then we came back in for the last 3 hours. And we would be quietly sitting there, And the back door opened to Studio One, humongous. Frank would walk in, followed by his entourage. He had just married the little girl.
Mia Farrow.
Mia Farrow. He would walk in, Sarge Wise was with him. Everybody was with him, his whole entourage. Frank with the little hat and the coat over his shoulder, Frank Sinatra, you know. And he'd walk, they'd march right into the studio, the booth, do all their hellos. Everybody would sit down somewhere. Frank would come out by himself, walk around to all of us, shake hands, how you doing, waves, you know, glad you're with me, blah, 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 blah. And he'd say, let's make a record. And he'd walk in the vocal booth, close the door. Oh, no, we got headsets, we're listening. Frank would say, let's make it, Jim. You got it, Frank. Take it, Ernie. Conductor, boom. Because we played the song, you know, several times. We had it down perfect. Frank would be listening, and he would be singing or humming or whatever, and he'd say, okay, let's make it. Okay, Frank. Bang, take one. Only once did I hear Frank. I don't remember what the song was. And then I said, because I love you. It was a song he did with Nancy.
Oh, okay.
Something Stupid. It was a hit record, too. But at one point, I think when we finished, that because Frank always did one take, goodbye. So you better be ready for him, that type of thing. That's why they went through so many detecting, make sure that there's not one squeal, one scratch, nothing.
One shot at this.
Exactly. But at this, it was either one of his songs or it was something stupid that he said, Jimmy, I'd really like to do one more. I think I could do a better one. Of course, Frank. And we did another one. And that was it. Goodbye. The one guy that we loved was Bing Crosby. Now, Frank and Dean, a lot of songwriters, song singers, crooners, balladeers, they all learned from Bing Crosby for some reason. I've heard many, many biographies, and they all say Bing Crosby was who they wanted to sound like. There was another guy, and I can't think of his name right now. He was a band leader. But he was another guy that they all liked. Bing Crosby, when I sat with Bing, and I took some nice pictures of Bing, he was the nicest guy in the world. And a 3-hour session was a 3-hour session. So if you did a session from 10 in the morning to 1 in the, I would say with Bing it was probably 1 in the afternoon to 4 o'clock. And we'd start rehearsing at 1 o'clock. Bing would sing, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. We'd do 3, 4 songs, whatever. And it's like 3 minutes to 4. And the producer would say, thank you, gentlemen. You did a great job. We've got some good records. Thanks very much. And everybody would say, okay. And we'd start to get our music. And Bing would say, well, Harry, I would really like to do just that first song. If we could just do that first song over. Whatever you want to do, Bing. Sure, of course. Guys, let's do that first song over again, whatever it was. But he was always looking at the clock, Bing. And he was always looking at us like, we're going to get a half-hour overtime here. And he purposely did that. And by the time you put the music up, and they quieted down and started the introduction, and it was now 3 minutes after, maybe 4 minutes after, and Bing would start singing this first song again, and then he'd say, it was maybe 5 after now, he'd say, no, Harry, I think we got it. I think it is the first one. You were right. The first one was good. Then he'd wink at the guys and leave. So everybody got a half-hour overtime.
That's fantastic.
Well, that was big fucking bucks.
Yeah.
Excuse my French.
To say the French. That's fantastic. That's cool.
But that's the way Bing was.
He was just doing it for you guys. That's really cool.
He was such a nice man. Such a nice man.
Let me ask you this. Who was the biggest a-hole you worked with?
You know, I don't know if... I loved everyone I ever worked with.
There was no one that just they threw a diva kind of fit and yelled at people, and no one ever talked nasty to you, or
I never saw that happen on one of my sessions. Now I personally almost got in a fist fight with John Phillips, Mamas and Papas, because he was a terrible junkie. Unfortunately, he put everything up his nose, and one of the things that he did, we used to record half the night sometimes at Western Studio 3 again, and John had a habit. He was a folk singer. Folk singers don't always sing 4 bars, 8 bars, 16 bars. They're storytellers. I understand that. And sometimes he didn't stick with the routine. He added bars. He dropped bars. These things happen. And when it's 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, you're tired. And I would always say, John, you added 2 bars right there at so-and-so and so-and-so. Do you want to do that? Just do it. I don't care how you want to do it. Just do it. Now, I never worked without a part, because there were times that engineers used razor blades in those days to go from take 5 to take 11 to get a perfect match and so forth. Good things on this one, bad things on that one. And I would say, John, hold on, and I would fix my part. If you're sure you're going to add those bars? Yes. Okay, let's try it again. Now he would drop a couple of bars. John, you did it again. You're going to drop those bars? You want to leave them in? He'd say, just the way I did it. Okay, hold on. I'd fix the part. Now the guys, too, would fix their parts if necessary. I just did not like to fake through anything. I wanted to know exactly, not only for my benefit to know where I'm at, but for the engineers who eventually will have to mix and splice and cut and do things. And so at one point, he did it again. He screwed up something, and he jumped up and he said, okay, Blaine, you did that one. That one's on you. And I came over the fucking drums. This was it. I couldn't handle it. And Lou Adler was out there in seconds, and Bones Howe grabbing me, grabbing him, and making us apologize. And everybody's tired. We know we're tired. Let's do it tomorrow. Forget this tune now. Let's go get some sleep or something. No, he'd say, no, I want to do this song. We're going to do it. And we would do it. And it all was forgiven. That was one of the beautiful times. John Phillips married Michelle. I just talked to her a couple of days ago. And they bought the old Jeanette MacDonald estate in Bel Air. Now that's over Beverly Hills. You know what I mean. They bought a beautiful home. And up in the ceiling area, there were a couple of special rooms that were built that were all cedar. And all of Jeanette MacDonald's gowns stayed up in those rooms that she'd used in movies and so forth and so on. Well, John Phillips decided he wanted to build a studio up there. This was against the law. You're living in Bel Air. You're not allowed to do things like that. I remember when Brian Wilson bought his home, in Bel Air, he immediately painted it purple. Well, they leaped on his butt immediately. He had to completely have the place sandblasted again and put back to whatever the color was, original Spanish Mediterranean. He loved my house. That's why he wanted that particular house. The Bellagio house, we called it. Anyway, here we are, me, Joe Osborne, Larry Knechtel, and they built this actual studio up there. Everything was hidden in the walls. You'd never know there was a studio in the house. Strictly illegal, according to code and homeowners association, whatever. And the Bel Air Patrol would come by. We got cars sitting out there, and their Mexican maid, very nice lady that cooked for us all the time, she would see the patrol driving by and she'd let us know. We would all run down to the living room and we'd pick up a pair of sticks or whatever, and they would come to the door and open the door. Oh yeah, and they'd say, well, where are the mamas and the papas? Say, oh yes, well we know that. We saw the cars, or we saw a truck or something. Well, we're just rehearsing. We're doing a television show next week or whatever. They'd say, oh, well, we understand. They'd go away. We'd go back up in the studio and record. You walked up this beautiful staircase. It was all wood panels. It was a gorgeous place. And about halfway up, you pushed one of the panels and the door slowly opened, and you went up into the studio. Completely hidden. Nobody knew it was there. And I remember one of the first times we recorded there, Lou Adler was smart, obviously brilliant man. He bought the equipment on Studio 3 where we always recorded at Western. He put it up in their new studio. And Lou decided he's going to be the engineer instead of Bones. So the first night we worked, and Lou had it all set up, and we rehearsed. Lou said, let's make it. Okay, we're rolling, take one. And we make this song. Came off perfect. We come over back down into the little studio area where Lou Adler is engineering. And he said, okay, let's hear a playback. And he hit the thing. Bzzz, nothing got recorded. I said, Lou, this is fucking F Troop. What are you doing to us? At that time, F Troop was a popular show.
Sure, Larry Storch.
Larry Storch was another guy we recorded. Anyway, the albums we did up in that attic area, on the end of those albums, if you can ever find them, it says Engineering by F Troop. It's great. So funny. God. And of course they all died. John thought that when he got his new liver, he could drink again. He knew he wasn't supposed to, but he... And then of course Mama Cass, which was another fallacy, she didn't choke on a sandwich. Right. She died of a heart attack. She'd had dinner and went to bed, whatever. And then the joke was going around that if Mama Cass had given Karen Carpenter the sandwich, they'd both be alive today. Yeah. Well, comical-wise, it's funny.
Yeah.
But it was not true. And then Denny was doing pretty good up in Canada. But when he was in Florida, he got plastered. He jumped out of a second floor window or something, broke both legs. Sobered up, couldn't do anything, couldn't go anywhere. Went back up to Canada and he joined some troupe. He was going to be doing a show up there or something. Had a heart attack and died. So Michelle's the only one left.
Yeah.
Which was really a shame. It was sad to have that happen. And they were really that shooting stars that plummeted and it was over. It's really too bad. For a while, Michelle was doing well. She did a few movies. She was a pretty girl, beautiful woman. And that happens to a lot of young, beautiful women. They'll get a couple good shots at something, and it's over. So she just had a birthday. She just called me the other day. I had sent her a birthday card. She thanked me, said everything was fine. She was dating a friend of mine. So hopefully everything's cool. Her kids are having kids. She's a grandmother. I'm a grandfather 7 times. A great-grandfather 3 times. Hard to believe. You know, yesterday I was 35 years old and swinging. Today I'm almost 85 and dragging both legs, you know, like really a senior citizen. It's just amazing, just amazing.
Folks, the great Hal Blaine. Hal, I thank you so much.
Hey, Dave, it's my pleasure.
For your time.
Really, just great. I mean, I'm glad you came by. It was terrific. I'm glad the phone didn't ring. Or maybe it did before.
Did once, but that's fine.
Well, I hope that all your listeners are having fun hearing the stories. I hope they all get to see the Wrecking Crew movie.
Yes.
That's one of the great, you know, I think when Tommy does his thing, Tommy did a thing of how, when he does clinics, how he explains how he does certain mood music for movies.
The Spanish thing?
Exactly.
Brilliant. Absolutely
He's
brilliant.
the only guy in the world I know. When I hear a record and I hear that particular cadenza or whatever the hell you call it, I can't even think right now. I always know it's Tommy. Nobody can do what he was doing. Nobody. They attempt it, but they can't do it. He was just amazing. We went to Hawaii. We did an album one time, or a couple of albums, with Don Ho from Hawaii. Great guy. And it wasn't long after that. It was a great time for me. And I loved Hawaii. I used to go there with Tommy Sands quite often. And one of the biggest producers over there, Tom Moffat, used to bring us over. He was the one that brought Elvis over, and among other people. He was a top disc jockey at KPOI. And we would go over there and do shows. He had little rock and roll shows, but we did a lot of interviews. And Tom Moffat just became a great producer, giant, bringing acts to Hawaii. It's like the guy in Australia that used to bring us over there. I forget his name. And we did Tiny Bubbles. You know, the great, I just lost his name.
Don Ho?
Don Ho.
Yeah.
And Don Ho, unbeknownst to a lot of people, was he was a fighter pilot in World War II. Great guy, sweetheart of a guy. And his lay back, you know, the way he talked and the way he sang was almost Dean Martin-ish.
Yeah, yeah.
Before Dean Martin. And at one time, Don Ho was so loved in Hawaii, he was going to run for president of the United States. And part of his campaign was, if I'm elected president of the United States, I'm going to move the White House to Hawaii and call it the Ho House. So, it was hysterical, just hysterical. And he was such a funny guy. But that whole trip, Tommy and I were making thousands of dollars. And I said, Tom, let's take a vacation. We did the stuff with Don Ho. We said, let's go to Hawaii. Let's take our wives to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Tommy said, okay, great, let's do. I said, all right. And we called back and forth and made reservations, United Airlines, whatever it was. Okay, I'll meet you at the airport. We'll meet you at the airport at so-and-so and so-and-so. So we get to LAX, and I don't see Tommy. I don't know if you're hearing that. That's a motorcycle outside or somehow. We get to LAX, there's no Tommy. So I said, I don't even remember who I was married to at the time. So I said, let's get... No, who the hell was I? I can't even remember the year. Anyway, so I said, let's get on a plane, you know. We're first class tickets. We get on the airplane. Haven't seen Tommy, and I'm worried about it. So eventually we take off, heading for Hawaii. Now I get up and I'm stretching my legs, and I walk toward the back of the plane through the curtains or whatever it was in those days, and they used to, that accordion door that was closed.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, I see Carmi, Tommy's wife. And Tommy is like this. He's against the window, and he's fast asleep. Well, I didn't know that Tommy was scared to death of flying. And he had to get a little juiced. And that's either drinking or took a sleeping pill, something.
Combo.
Or a combo. So we went to Hawaii. We had a great time. But here, he didn't buy a first class ticket for he and his wife. He bought a tourist ticket. And here we're making all this money. And so I ribbed him about that for a long time. And one of the jokes we used to do, I have a diamond ring that I purchased from Cartier, New York. Mm-hmm. Gorgeous little ring. You can see this ring.
Beautiful pinky ring, folks.
Beautiful ring. And the day that I bought this ring, the day that I received it and put it on, I went to work, and it happened to be a session with Gary Lewis.
And the Playboys.
Tommy and I.
Well, you were the Playboys for the day, weren't you?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was Joe Osborne on bass. But I wore the ring. And I went to Tommy. I said, man, I just got this delivered to me from New York. I bought this Cartier. It's beautiful. It's a gorgeous ring. Wow. And he reached into his pocket and he pulled out a $100 bill, put it around his finger. He said, this is my new ring. Knocked me out. He had the greatest sense of humor. Geez, it was funny. So that's how he showed off his diamond ring. Anyway, I never would let him live down there. He went tourist when we went first class.
Bastard.
That was funny. Funny how things happen. You remember, reminds you of things. I was with John Denver all those years, and his wife Annie. He wrote all those songs for Annie, sweetest little gal in the world. And at one point, we went to Hawaii. Me and I think it was the Barbarian, and John Denver, some of the guys in the band, and we were John Denver's guests. Beautiful suites in Hawaii. I forget what island even that we were on. It might have been Maui. And so we all, we flew over there. We didn't see John until we got there. And then we were there for a week or 10 days, which was a magnificent vacation on John. John wanted to give us a vacation. And so we're flying back. It was after 10 days, the morning of the 11th or whatever. John comes by the room. He says, Bill Hara is sending his Gulfstream for Annie and I. Would you and Barbara like to fly back with us to LAX instead of commercial? I said, yeah, it'd be great. Now, this is a beautiful catered Gulfstream airplane, which is an amazing jet, 2 pilots, 2 waitresses, 4 people. It was just wonderful. So I really got spoiled that way, because when you fly like that, and they didn't have the kind of security that you go through today. But she still had to go through a lot of baloney and wait to get on the airplane, on and on and on. With John, if we were on his own airplane, you got to the airport, you got on, you were gone. Because that's the way it usually was. We always had a charter. But this particular airplane, we had this beautiful flight. Well, anyway, John says to me, in those days we used to say, bags at 7, bus at 8. So the band always had, our bags always had tags. We never touched our luggage. You put it outside of your room. Mm-hmm. It was at the hotel where you're going the next town or the next week or whatever it was. And so John said, all right, we're leaving a little early, so do bags at 6, and the limo will pick us up at 7. I said, fine, John, see you in the morning. So that morning, I'm up 4:35 in the morning, and I had coffee or room service, whatever. So I get down to the cashier. I'm ready to go, cleaned up and ready to go. I go down to the cashier, and I tell the girl I'd like to pay my incidentals, Yes, sir, Mr. Blaine, and whatever it was, a couple $100, and I'm writing a check to the cashier. And John and Annie come running up. John says, what are you doing? And he grabbed his check and he tore it up. He said, no, this is my party for you. And I said, John, I don't expect you to pay for my wife's Kotex. Well, he got a big kick out of that, of course. And that was sort of the end of it. I said, well, thank you so much. I mean, this has been a beautiful trip. And now time passes, and we go forward about, maybe 3-4 months. And we were playing Milwaukee. And whenever we played in Milwaukee, I forget the venue, there was a great big, one of those special restaurants that the Wisconsin people, what the hell do they call it? Smorgasbord type. Well, it was that type of place. But it was that kind of restaurant with all of the various deli type, everything, all European. It was magnificent.
Oh, okay.
And John they would set up a table, because there were about 18 of us, maybe 20 of us at the table. And John always sat at one end, and Annie was at the other end when she was with us. And John used to love, he would sit at each table, at each chair with each of us, and sip some of our wine or his own wine, and he would tell us how much he loves us, and thanks for being my orchestra and helping me with my career, and the sweetest guy in the world. He was a sweetheart. So at one point when he finished his rounds, somebody in the group said, how about a toast for John? He took us to Hawaii a few months ago. And Annie jumped up and she said, and Hal Blaine was the only one who even tried to make a payment on that bill. Well, that was, everybody just absolutely...
Silence, pin drop.
Exactly. Just really shut up. But you see, she didn't mean it in a bad way. But, this was... And John, I know John felt bad about it, because he was nuts about her, and she was nuts about him.
But then she ended up taking him for every penny.
Well, it wasn't even exactly that.
Oh, it is what it is. Mother of the kids, I get it.
Exactly.
It is what it is. I know.
Exactly.
We all know the deal.
They adopted children, and she only wanted what she had coming to her, nothing more.
Yep.
And
John, $8 million, I believe, was...
That's right. It was $8 million. They had offered her $1 million. I think that was the number.
Yeah.
And at one point, John was very upset, and because 50% was his and 50% was hers, and John went up there with a chainsaw and sawed the bed down in the middle.
Nice.
They had a magnificent home up there.
Yeah.
And John was best man at my wedding. He gave us a wedding, me and the Barbarian. on the top of Kessler Mountain in Aspen was absolutely magnificent. I had all those pictures. I couldn't look at them. They used to make me crazy. I finally sent them to the Barbarian's sister, Molly, who's a wonderful lady, plays great flute. She's with the Long Beach Symphony or one of those symphonies. Very nice gal. And she had been through a divorce, so she knew what I had been going through, whatever. And I'm sure she felt sad about all of that, and I felt sad for her. Terrific lady. And at one point, she even said to me something about, it was my birthday. She came to a birthday party for me in Hollywood. Molly, her sister. And she came to the party. And somebody at the party said, "Who's that lady there you were talking to? We saw you with that pretty lady, nice lady." I said, "Oh, you're talking about my former sister-in-law." And they said, "Oh, that's what she meant." Because we asked her, the woman, what was her connection, and she said, "Hal used to be married to the Barbarian, my sister." I said, "You mean to tell me she actually said Barbarian?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "He used to be married to the Barbarian, my sister." So I felt completely
vindicated.
Vindicated, that's the word. Good word. Anyway, those were some wonderful times. It's a shame that they go by. It's that old saying, too soon we grow old, too late we grow smart. And that seems to be the way it is. So I had my 15 minutes, maybe it was 20 minutes, but, I have no regrets, absolutely no regrets. I don't think I ever treated anyone badly. I think most people treated me decently. I did achieve all the goals that I was after, but I did have my nose to the grindstone. I did study. I did work hard, studying my craft. And that's, I do clinics today around the country, schools, colleges, music stores, drum stores, and I always tell the kids, you've got to keep your nose to the grinding wheel. You've got to stay away from drugs, stay away from, the booze that's made for people who are not educated, and generally, and you can get hooked overnight. So don't think that's not going to happen to me. Just stay away from that stuff, The food we eat is bad enough for us. The soda pops that we drink, and my refrigerator is full of soda pop. We all know it's bad for us. But there's certain things you say, hey, at my age, I can enjoy whatever I want to enjoy. The hell with it. Done it all. Had it all. Seen it all. Lost it all. Got a lot of it back. That's enough for me. Really enough for me. I've got all the... You're sitting in the midst of practically a museum of all these awards and all these wonderful things. The thing that from Elvis, all this stuff. I mean, it's just one of those things. It was my time, I guess. I was in the right place at the right time with the right stuff.